Good morning, everybody. Please take your seats. The June 26th Board of Directors meeting is called to order. First, I'd like to ask our interpreters to explain how to access interpretation. Please go ahead.
Good morning. Announcement from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon and select English as your language. If you're joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you're in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Buenos días. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, globo terráqueo y seleccione Spanish. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos y luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en esta reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States. From 4 cultural groups, the Kumeyaay, the Genyo, the Luceño, the Cupeño, and the Cahuilla. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the injustices of the past. Now please stand and join me in the flag salute. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Michael, can you please confirm quorum?
We have a quorum, Chair.
Thank you. Let's move on to non-agenda public comments. How many do we have?
If you're online, please raise your hand now. We have 4 in person and we have 2 online. So it's Purita Javier, followed by Cesar Javier in person.
Good morning. I am Purita Javier, senior with existing medical condition and victim of ceramic skin toxicity since 1997. My husband Cesar here, beginning 2012. The hazardous home business was located, constructed, and operated in a residential zone community since 1984 by an owner who has his ceramics vocational training in Mesa College. In 1992, he became a member of the 40 artists of the San Diego Pottery Guild based in Balboa Park until today. For 5 years now, we sought representation with the city, 11
Elected officials.
Officials, including city attorney, but ignored and neglected since we sought help with APCD, where we learned that the leadership has been under ways to Gloria, the
Thank you. Your time has expired. Next is Cesar Javier, followed by Truth.
Thank you. Thank you, SANDAG. Thank God. Of the 8, Mom Chair, please. For 5 years, our 8 community concern has been neglected, ignored by the land use chair, Mr. Lee, who has more priority on business rather than safety and health of San Diegans. He was very proud showing convoy, wealth-getting, driver of economy. For what? I believe it's all for man. That is the meaning. But why are the sick and dying, Ma'am Aguirre, has never been given priority? No one here is homeless. No one here is penniless, including the city employees who are here. You are in the well-to-do sector. How could you feel and sense the needs of the less? That's a challenge. How could you cure, care, feed, shelter the less if you have not undergone such tragic life? Good governance is intellectual interest in people, in every citizen, including those who cross the border. Sir Mario, good governance is all about caring from conception to grave.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Next is Truth, followed by allegedly Audra.
That was a great speech. I talk Chair Frank Rivera has a conflict of interest by working for Capuzzi, which has deals with SANDAG while being on the Transit Oversight Committee at the same time. That is not independent. Speaking of which, there was the usual SANDAG sneakiness around public input on the MTS fare hike. SANDAG held one meeting at this building on a Tuesday workday, while the second meeting was at 6 p.m. in San Marcos, where MTS has no service. Neither meeting was well advertised. And MTS and NCTD could even show up to the Transportation Committee for the waivers they asked for. However, when MTS CEO Sharon Cooney, paid over $370,000 a year, did show up, here's what she said.
Well, always they're looking for money.
What a loser. Because MTS is corrupt, here's a SANDAG project idea. Trench and double track the copper shuttle between Gillespie Field and Santee Trolley Station. Ease car congestion on Santee's main road, speed up the trolley frequency, and reconnect the entire system for underserved or not served East County. Also, fix the cracked roads near Old Mission Road on the 76. It's embarrassing. And why are there bus stops on that highway? How would somebody get to them on the 76 other than with a car? It is stupid. Next story time, completely opposite. After the last SANDAG meeting, I ran into one of the millions of former SANDAG employees. They recognized me by my trademark hat, of course. They asked if I was still fighting the good fight, how SANDAG was going, and how the county was going. I said SANDAG's better, but there's still a few bad ones left, and that the county's going to bleep. True story. As someone who does not support metal detectors but does support toxic board members kept away from the public, I want to thank the security team here who have been nothing but excellent in their service and how they treat the public. Robin in particular has a really great eye and intuition for safety and personalities that you don't just find on the street anywhere. You guys have actually done a disservice to the public, and that is a compliment to everyone on the security. Friendly reminder, none of you have the right to lead. You only have the privilege to represent, and you're all replaceable too. Thank you.
Next is allegedly Audra, followed by Paul the Bold Online.
Yeah, what a disgrace to change the contract with the security team. And, you get comfortable with these people. I feel like that's why that happens a lot. And that's unfortunate because you should feel comfortable coming in places, and who knows what's going to come next. But I want to get you guys to continue to put you on notice, and you're running out of time to deal with the cure and correct of the meetings that you didn't properly notice that I was present at, which was the chiefs and sheriffs, the audit committee, and the executive committee in the beginning of this month. And I told you guys this last time, it would behoove you to push to correct those meetings. There's only 3 of them. Or I'm going to go back 6 months for every single meeting that you have done here and every committee meeting that has taken place, and null and void every bit of work that you guys have done. And it's like you guys want to dig your feet into the ground because you act like you're untouchable, but these are basics. These are protocol on how to run a meeting, and if you cannot properly do that, again, you can't be trusted with anything. So I suggest that you take the time to talk to your attorneys and have them do the right thing. Because I have an attorney that I'm going to use, and I will go after every single one, and they'll be happy to do it because of arrogance on all of these boards that think that they can do business like that when you know that you can't. And since, sure, you have course corrected, but I was told also that was done as a favor or a courtesy. No, it's by law that it has to be done. So, it's up to you guys right now what you want to do. And if you want to go down this path in that litigation, it's going to cost a lot of money to do. And I don't think that that's fair to the people for you to do and to go down that path. Course correct.
Next is Paul the Bold, followed by Blair Beekman.
Hi, Paul Bold. You can hear me, I hope. Good morning.
Yes, go ahead.
Disturbing that the Wall Street 508 stabilization project change order was approved without any actual member discussion or justification as to why we're on the hook now for 4.1 more million bucks, like we're some kind of automatic piggy bank. Too many items like this and items on consent which should have a full discussion. It may be better for the county if SANDAG does not continue in its present form, but I'm not the first. The state suggested in 2001 that dividing the county into districts where the people could arrange them by geography or neighborhood would produce far better results. Then everyone in the county would be represented by a voting member, which they aren't now. People would have to work together, not city by city, and all areas in San Diego would not have one representative, regardless of that area's individual opinion. I suggest 1. Northeast County Mountains, 2. Southeast County Desert, 3. Mideast County Foothills, 4. I-15 Corridor Agricultural, 5. Native Tribes North, 6. Native Tribes South, 7. Navy Influence, 8. South Coastal, 9. South Inland, 10. SD Central San Diego, 11. SD North, 12. Mid-County, 13. North Coastal, and that would be 13 voting representatives and a lot fairer. And maybe more people would show up to your work.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Next is Blair Beekman for our last public comment, Consuelo.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Happy Friday. Happy end of June to everyone. I guess there's one more week after this, but I think we're towards the end, definitely last Friday of June. Yeah, I wanted to comment. I heard on KPBS radio yesterday that a Tijuana council person is, and I suppose a group in Tijuana, they are looking into the work of Oceanside and their work with pure water issues. It looks like they're interested in the idea of pure water and the concept of that and how they can eventually be doing that through the Tijuana River Valley. It may take some years, but they are actually working on the issue and they're making it open and public and clear. good luck. And the woman mentioned, the council person mentioned, you know, that if we have good communication in our future, that's important. And I try to say that often here. And I know SANDAG and Mario really works on the concept of cross-border dialogue and how that can be. Any chance we can get to create better dialogue instead of, you know, keeping it all hidden and secretive, that's better for us. As much as we get mad at Tijuana for not practicing more openness and community, we do the same to them. You know, we have the same kind of rules. So good luck in communication and dialogue. They're really developing something well right now. SANDAG has a great part in that process. And good luck how we can all learn and work more with Tijuana with pure water and other issues in the future. With my remaining time, I wanted to again mention to yourselves that the city of Oakland and its county of Alameda, they are leaving flock in the next 18 months. They're doing it through a community process to find a new ALPR vendor. I think that's an awesome example. It's time. It's working with community. I hope you can take that to heart for your own communities. Thank you.
Our last public comment phone, we're ending in 8813. Go ahead, 8813. You seem to be self-muted.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Michael. So I just want to point out, Consuelo here, SANDAG has been around for decades, yet ask the average San Diegan what it is, who runs it, or how to hold it accountable, and most can't tell you. That's a problem. And this agency makes decisions that affect how we travel, where our tax dollars go, and how our communities are designed. Yet it remains largely unknown to the very people funding it. That's a problem. And let's also talk about the bike lanes, the inequitable bike lanes. They are sold as equitable, but equity means meeting the needs of everyone, not just one tiny nanofraction of a group. The overwhelming majority of San Diegans still rely on cars to get to work, take their children to school, transport elderly family members, and run businesses. Removing vehicle lanes, eliminating parking, and increasing congestion while spending billions on projects that many people don't use isn't equity. It's stupid. And not to mention, obvious, it's not for the people, for the globalists. SANDAG has become known for top-down planning and lack of transparency, bureaucratic expansion, costly studies, endless consultants, and policies that often move forward despite significant public opposition. Time and time again, residents show up, voice concerns, and are ignored while predetermined agendas continue. We're globalists. You work, you're supposed to be working for the public.
Thank you. Your time has expired. That concludes our public comment, Chair.
Thanks, Michael. We're now on to non-agenda member comments. Ms. Maxson.
Good morning. The Association of Planning Group wishes to thank SANDAG. At our most recent association meeting, we had invited SANDAG to attend. We had both Clint Peast and Jennifer Williamson. They came out with a really thorough presentation on how SANDAG works in the unincorporated area. It was very beneficial to our members. We spent almost 2 hours with a productive back and forth Q&A session, and SANDAG's attendance resulted in strengthening our ongoing partnership. So the association wishes to thank SANDAG for allowing Clint and Jennifer to come out and do such a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good news. I have a couple announcements. The first is that the Audit Committee Selection Committee has found and recommended 3 public members for the Audit Committee. Their appointments are going to come before this body on the July 10th meeting. I'd like to thank Vice Mayor Molina and other members of the Selection Committee for their time and attention and work throughout the selection process. Yes, Mayor Sanchez.
Are you done? Can I report on something?
Yes.
Yes, is that okay?
You go right
Yeah,
ahead.
I wasn't going to say anything, but there was a speaker who referred to it. The city of Oceanside a couple of days ago hosted some electeds from Baja California, including the officials from Tijuana and Tecate. It was with the Institute of the Americas, and it was a binational water reuse learning exchange program that they're having. They were very excited about our pure water project, especially as a city our size doing something like this and being the first in the county to have moved forward. They talked about the need for water in Tijuana. No other, I'm trying to remember if it's in the world or what, but they said that they use more bottled water in Tijuana than any other place. Tecate is especially interested in doing a pure water project, but I asked if pure water would be something that they could do as a project along with what is happening now, since there is a lot of interest in funding a solution to the sewage of the Tijuana River. So it was really exciting to have them there, and we're actually looking to be invited to Tecate to talk again about pure water. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that addition. I'll turn it over to Mario.
I'm wondering if I could have an opportunity. I'm sorry, I don't think this is working. Thank you. And good morning. I wanted to see if we could get something on the agenda. I'm also on the SANDAG Public Safety Board, and in my district, there are 5 tribal communities. So I was able to meet with tribal representatives, take a tour of what is most concerning to them regarding the roadways. And I have to say that some of the county roadways were very concerning to me when driving. I had the death grip on my steering wheel. So with that, I was wondering if we could agendize having a legal explanation to better understand, or maybe to refresh for those that already know about it, the recollection of Senate Bill 535 when it comes to disadvantaged communities. My understanding is that tribal communities are automatically covered under this. So I'm hoping we'd be able to get an explanation so I can better understand it myself and the public, and then see what we could do to address some of these traffic concerns and issues, as there are a high number of collisions, and a lot of them end in very critical injuries. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. We've been working with the tribal governance group, having a few meetings a year. Staff is meeting with them often, and I think that's a good idea to have an informational item for us on the board to understand.
Thank you.
A little bit more.
I appreciate it.
Okay, Mario.
Thank you. I was going to say something about the tribal, but I'll wait for when we give you a whole update, because we are working on some projects with the tribes, several locations. And again, sometimes SANDAG works on capital projects, meaning expansions on the state routes or in the county roads. But normally the operational improvement projects and maintenance projects sometimes fall within the owner operators, which will be the state, like for some state routes in the county. But we are working, and we'll give you a briefing on what we're doing, as well as what you asked, the different efforts in Senate Bill 535 and disadvantaged communities. Excellent. Updates. We recently released the annual report for the state of the commute. Some of the notable highlights is basically that average weekday ridership is increasing for the 5th year in a row for transit, for MTS and North County Transit. We also had the fare change first reading to the Transportation Committee that happened just recently. And the next reading will be the official decision, and it will be in July. Flexible Fleets Grant Program. The application period for this program has been extended for Friday, July 31st. There's been a lot of questions. SANDAG released the SB 79 maps. We have put them up, meeting our commitment that it's required in the statute. We stamped up drafts, as we have been hearing from different groups and agencies about comments. Pretty much, the agencies have to take or have already taken actions. That is the map that we have. If we find somebody points out some blunt mistakes, we go and evaluate it. That's why we posted our methodology also in the webpage. On the California budget, the budget has been approved, or there was consensus on it. There are still negotiations happening until July 1st. There is a proposed significant reduction on the cap and invest rule changes, so that would affect several funding sources, especially for some of the transit projects or transit operations. We are, together with MTS and North County Transit, advocating and having discussions and bringing up the concerns about those cuts. So there are ongoing discussions in Sacramento how that funding that's being moved or taken away could be replenished. Those are ongoing discussions, but the main takeaway is there is going to be less. And we need to be prepared to acknowledge that up to a point and figure out how we can also help ourselves in this region and strategize and also work with Sacramento. We did have also last week a great discussion with the different city managers of your cities in our city manager meeting. And it was a very good and robust discussion of how everybody is working to adjust fiscal challenges and different strategies. So sometimes that exchange of information and ideas is very helpful. And finally, I want to let you know that our offices will be closed this Friday, July the 3rd, in observance of Independence Day. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mario. We'll go on to our consent agenda. Michael, do we have any public comments on consent?
We do. If you're online and want to comment on consent, please raise your hand now. Just to note, we will please limit your comments to items on the consent agenda only. Please state the consent agenda item you are speaking to. If comments are not related to the consent agenda, you will be asked to stay on topic. If you not stay on topic, you will be muted. So we have 3 in person and 2 online, Chair. This is Truth, followed by Cesar Javier.
Rebecca and Terry were late by 9 minutes. Item 3.1, the minutes say Lauren and free speech Nazi Kevin were absent by the consent. And this is a meeting where a Lisa was pulled and we had a 2-hour-long wait for non-agenda. So Lisa either stepped down or quit conceding to the good-for-nothings who get paid to leave meetings early. Item 3.2, when are the policies going to be changed to hold MTS accountable for their fraud, waste, and abuse? MTS's rep, M.I.A. Matthew, this is like the first time you've actually showed up. How can NCT and MTS guarantee $9.6 million a year from a fare hike if both refuse to require paid ridership? And I find it very strange that this is not being a discussion amongst this board. I find that very untransparent. I feel like this was always a charade, just like the copper line. Item 3.3, if SANDAG's blowing $24,836 on guest Wi-Fi, how come the password is not provided to the public? Why did finance need to waste $7,500 on their vacation to DC and Virginia? Just because SANDAG's old corrupt buddies, Deloitte and H&TB went, doesn't mean anyone from SANDAG needs to go. Kimberly, Cammie, and Anthony were late on $42,000 of their taxpayer-funded bills. Cammie's racking up too much money, plus had a $220 personal charge on our credit card. Jennifer spent $89 and Michelle spent $80 in unallowable expenses. What is going on with SANDAG employees? Aren't we past this? SANDAG public meetings from January to March cost $8,799.64. And the word supporting was misspelled on page 6 of attachment 7. Item 3.4, no to yet another $3 million slime green paint line nobody's going to use. No to $136 million going to corrupt fraudsters, MTS. Item 3.5, the $10,000 bill should be sent directly to Obama, and the $12,000 bill needs to be sent directly to Biden, who were the presidents when the military didn't pay what they owed SANDAG. Item 3.6, NCTD and MTS have been out of compliance for years. Transportation Committee had it wrong and ITALC had it right. Force these agencies to clean up their own messes. That is how they got to a fare hike.
Next is Cesar Javier, followed by allegedly Audra. This is a consent agenda. Please state the item you're speaking to.
Hold it. Oh. We are here and we are learning fast. 3.1, the product of resources. Taxpayers' money. That includes you, the wealthy sector of our society, the learned, educated, independent political unit like the city of San Diego has this process too. Yours is 1/5, SANDAG. The city has the whole number, 5 elements in planning, urban planning for humans. And we could only dream from this lesson in the minutes. Why can't we discuss the priority elements of survival? Mama Gire, I say again and again, you're right. Sick and dying border residents, San Diegans. We dream that it should be the forward azimuth in our minutes. 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, 3.6 are all processes, if only to keep San Diegans survive. Trying to live centenarian life fulfilled. This is all about our planning, not just for a good car, electric or water fed, not only for fancy shelter, not only for fancy basic needs. Please listen, city employees. We are hurt. We live in...
Thank you. Your time has expired. Next is allegedly Audra, followed by Paul the Bold online. Please state the consent agenda item you're speaking to.
Has to do with all of them because it is all fraud, waste, and abuse, because I want to know who you guys work for. It surely isn't the people. You don't like when the people come and even have anything to say to you guys. For the most part, none of you pay attention. You're on your phones, so you obviously are proving that we are an afterthought. You don't do things that are beneficial to us. You go in what's in compliance, like with the state or the federal government. You don't go, we're fighting for what the people want here. No, you go to Sacramento and you're like seeing what they're doing. But it's like anytime someone gets into public office, it's like they'll make all these promises. And then as soon as they get in there, it's like the people are out of their thoughts because they're right in there doing the business, doing what needs to be done, forcing the things that need to be forced, which is all an agenda. And it's like, but you gaslight the people and you sit here and you say that you're doing it for us and you have all these great presentations so that on the surface, the people think what you're doing is beneficial. But it's like when you're just trying to follow a policy and be in compliance so that you can get funding, and then you do pointless things, again, like the bike lanes. Oh, eventually we'll connect them, but right now it's cool if it just goes onto the freeway. I mean, we were in compliance for that. So, we did what we needed to do, and now we're going to be able to get more funding. I mean, at what point are you actually going to care what the people think? Because you should want the people in here so that you can determine what you're going to vote on. But it's like, you already know you don't need us. Because again, we're an afterthought. And you guys are money whores. You'll go and you'll do anything for money. But you won't do anything for your constituents. And that's why everything you do in here is fraud, waste, and abuse. Again, you can't even be trusted to notice a meeting properly, which is so easy to do. And to say that it's like, oh, that's, just for you, like out of a, courtesy. Like, are you freaking kidding me? That's why it's so egregious what you guys do, because you don't care about the people.
Next is Paul the Bold online, followed by Blair Beekman.
Paul Bold. Well, Judy, so much for the county's 70% pavement index they keep boasting about. So 3.2 PAC actions. What happened to the Transnet Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee on the 10th? Canceled? Don't want to reveal the results? So the Transportation Committee discussed the MTS fare increases of 20 to 40%. Raising fares that much, even over 2 years, will affect affordability big time and deliver a knockout blow to minorities and low-income persons who you say you want to protect. More concerning to you is that at this point an Uber might be cheaper and also get you right to where you want. As the fare riders paying the same NCDD fare regardless of distance, some people have deep pockets, but most would revolt, and against alternatives like Uber would suddenly look better. A fare regardless of distance is not what transit is all about. You estimate 5.5% fewer MTS boardings and 4.5 on MCTD. What you don't seem to mention is that as word spreads of what people can do instead to save money, ridership will go down. Waymo, you might say. Senior, disabled, and youth discounts are good. Post-secondary discounts should be canceled. A rude awakening, but welcome to the real world. And on the other hand, fare capping with Pronto looks good. Maybe you can make up for decreased ridership by extending it to a few days or even a week. On the TDA claims, 3.4 resolution 2020.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Next is Blair Beekman, followed by phone number 8813.
Hi, Blair Beekman. I wanted to speak on items 3.1 and 3.2. Myself, for this item, with item 3.2, the Policy Advisory Committee actions, your attachment 2 was on the first reading of proposed amendments to the Regional Comprehensive Fare Ordinance. The Transportation Committee has a pretty important voice in deciphering and working through what the STMTS is asking for right now, and they kind of have a lot of weight in how that decision process will go. I hope the SANDAG Board and Transportation Committee can be sensitive to what SDMTS is trying to work towards right now. It's my understanding there's going to be like at least a 3-month waiting period in the fall. Reports will come back by the early fall, and then a bit more time may be needed through the fall to work out those final arrangements for lower discounted fares for certain people. Good luck in the efforts to respect the SDMTS ideas and how they want to work. I know you guys have had a bit of differences recently. It was explained here that in the recent meetings that you've worked those differences out and that you're ready to just coordinate and work with SDMTS well. I hope you can get ideas like Transnet funding can be a way, it technically can be used, if we do it accountably, it can be used to support SDMTS over, the 3 months of the fall. If you're going to need an additional time to work on the issues past the September readings where you're supposed to come to some conclusions. So if that can be of help, I hope it can. Really good luck that we can keep fares as low as possible for a certain segment. Good luck in those efforts. Thank you.
Our last public comment is phone number ending in 8813.
Okay, Consuelo here. So 3.1, another rubber stamp for the official narrative. If the record doesn't reflect what the public actually said, then it's not transparency. Just more bullshit theater. 3.2, more unelected committees shaping policies that influence how people live, travel, and spend their tax dollars, while the public has little meaningful say. 3.3, the more authority delegated behind the scenes, the less accountability the public sees. Government should answer to the people, not operate on autopilot. 3.4, more taxpayer money flowing into transportation policies that continue to reshape how people move around this region. The public deserves a real voice in those priorities. 3.5, another write-off, another loss absorbed by taxpayers. When government makes financial mistakes, the public shouldn't be expected to pay the bill. But yeah, whatever. 3.6, more funding requests, more expansions, more planning, and more control over how San Diegans travel. SANDAG continues asking for more money while many residents still question its priorities and accountability. Yeah. How much time do I have left?
32 seconds.
I'm done.
That concludes our public comment on this item, Chair.
Thank you. We'll go to member comment on consent. We'll start with Councilmember Gasterland.
Yeah, I have a brief question on the NCIS unpaid bills for Argis. And that's, is there a process in place to keep this from happening again? Have these contracts and signing the contracts timely been straightened out?
Our directors and Kimberly will be coming up, but I've been talking to Tony and they are very on top of the daily billing and administration. I don't know, Kim, if you have anything.
Great question. Argis and accounting have been working together to make sure this does not happen again. I think we are still seeing cleanup from years ago. And so as the report said, in 21, they started a concerted effort to really look at what had been billed and not collected. And so this is there's been a lot of effort put into trying to collect this. And we're at the point where we don't think it will happen. So that's the reason for the agenda item today. So there are definitely parameters in place to make sure that we are entering into contracts before we are providing services and billing. That's a key one, as well as staying up on making sure that the payments are received.
And was there a contract in place for years prior?
Yeah, I'm actually going to turn it over to our Argis team.
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
So there was no contract that covered the charges in 2016 and no contract that covered the charges for 2019. But, was there a contract for 2015 or earlier? Was there a prior contract, or was the 2016 contract the first contract between SANDAG and NCIS Naval, and that's Pendleton and San Diego separately? Has a contract ever existed? Does it exist now? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Prior to 2016, I would have to look when NCIS actually became a participating member in Argis. I don't have that information with me right now. I can get back to you on that. But moving forward, we have been doing our due diligence to make sure that the contracts are signed before we provide services. After 2019 to 2021, from then on, we have a contract with NCIS. But let me double check on the prior years.
Okay. So that's my question for 3.5. And I do have a question about 3.4. So 3.4 is the Transportation Development Act, where SANDAG will be receiving and passing through funds that come from a 0.25% sales tax, I think on diesel fuel. That's the way the staff report is worded. And I just wanted to make sure that I got my totals correct. So SANDAG, it looks like we'll be getting 6.2 million, 561,000, and 3.88 million. And then separately, there's another 4 million for bicycle and pedestrian projects. So SANDAG's total, not including the 4 million, is 10.64 million of the total 216 that includes the 7 million carry forward. And then the NCTD total that we're approving is the 52.82 that's mentioned separately and is in a separate exhibit, but there's also 10.79 million and 2.77 million. So NCTD will be getting 66.38 million of this 216 million. Am I getting those numbers right? They're spread out throughout all the different exhibits. So I wanted to just make sure I'm on target.
Let me point at the finance team here because I didn't bring my calculator with me.
Sorry, give me 1 sec to pull up the attachment.
There is a lot of numbers.
Yeah, it really was a lot of numbers in many places. And, you know, we have people in Del Mar who are sensitive to the train and are watching these numbers. And so they asked me, how much is NCTD getting? And I looked at it and I said, well, 10.79 million. And then I started looking deeper and, you know, maybe Jewel has an update also.
We can, you know, as they're looking at it, but we can provide you a full report on the different funding sources that the transit agencies are getting and on the rail service. As you know, we deal with a lot of funding colors and formulas. I don't know if the team has the answer, but I would be cautious on what they're telling you and you conveying it to the public, and probably going through a good scrub of all the numbers and giving you a very valid summary that is digestible with the public.
It looks like Councilmember Edson might have some information on this.
Yes, it's my understanding that the TDA claim amount for NCTD is 56.49 million, and NCTD's STA allocation estimate for FY 2027 is 10.79 million.
So it's the sum of those two numbers, probably.
What would think?
Marcus, Kim, you want to just...
Yeah, the 56.491 million is just TDA separate of the STA claim. The STA claim is not on attachment 1, and the STA is based on the estimate that we get, and yeah, it's not on attachment 1.
So if you would be open for us to getting you a more detail and summarize piece of information so you could have it well validated and in a simple way, so we can provide you all that, if you are okay with that, council member.
Yes, that would be helpful. Thank you.
We'll get back to you on that.
Vice Chair Minto.
Okay, I actually have quite a few questions. Some may not be asked. Some might just be even a little bit rhetorical here, but as to item number 3.2, policy advisory committee actions. I read where there's a final vote for the ordinance amendment to schedule at the transportation committee's meeting on July 17th. So my question is, do we vote on any of these ordinances or anything? And why would we hear this before they take their final vote for recommendation?
Antoinette, do you want to clarify the delegations and all that?
So per Board Policy 1, the fare ordinance is delegated to the Transportation Committee. At the meeting on the 12th, they heard the first reading and approved waiving the first reading. The ordinance will go back to the Transportation Committee at their July 17th meeting, and that's when they'll be asked to approve the amendments to the fare ordinance. The board ratifies the actions that the Transportation Committee takes. However, the board can't change that action. We would have to go back and kind of start from scratch if the board did not ratify the action.
So if you have a first and second reading and it becomes an ordinance after the second reading, or 30 days later anyways, usually, what makes a difference if we hear it or not? Well, are we just wasting our time, or is it just an information item?
No, the final vote for ratification, it's a yes or no. If the board says no, the fair ordinance goes back to the drawing board to square one. Now, if the question is for today's item is just ratifying that Transportation Committee waived the reading of the ordinance.
You know how sometimes that has happened in the past. You have to read the whole, 300 pages.
No, I get that. I'm just trying to figure out the redundancy here of it must be a statute that it happens this way.
Board policy requires it.
Okay, well, board policy isn't statute though, and usually when you talk about laws becoming ordinances or wherever they happen to be, usually it's the governing body that makes those determinations, has a first, second reading, and then it becomes law. So, or if this is a first and second reading to become policy, then why are we calling it ordinance? I'm just trying to clear this up because, you know, I've been doing this a long time and I know we've done certain things in certain ways over the years. And if I get a little bit confused on it, then other folks that aren't as, you know, used to hearing the questions and whatnot may be very confused. So it goes back to that transparency issue on who's really in charge.
Well, ultimately, the board's in charge, but that's part of, I think, what I've been saying for quite a while is that part of my overall cleanup is that there are some, I think, redundancies here, and Transportation Committee is delegated or allowed to, per board policies, to have these requirements, and this is how it's written in the board policies, that ultimately, as Antoinette specified, there's these requirements and it's going to be taken to the board for either a yes or no vote. It doesn't always apply for other things, but that's how it's written on this situation.
Okay, well, my recommendation is that we do that cleanup language because you shouldn't have a policy committee creating ordinances. They should be maybe, and not having a first and second reading, that should be our job as the board of directors, since we have to make the final decision. And it's a waste of time if this board of directors says, no, we don't like that, we're not going to ratify it. And then it goes all the way back, and how much time and energy and money have we lost on all of that happening? So I want to hear recommendations from policy committee members and allow the board of directors, I think, make the legal decisions on first, second readings.
So Mayor Minto, I think right now what's on the agenda actually is just that they waive the reading, and that sounds like it's a policy discussion that you're asking that we have
right
when we do the bylaws.
And that's and I get what we have today is what we have.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring up the questions because I think going forward, this is it needs to be cleaned up, and we need to bring that back. But I don't think, unless I ask questions, I don't think we can get to that direction.
We got it. Move on your next one.
All right, thanks. And on item number 5, I'm going to skip that one. And I'm going to go directly to 3.6 because that's the one that has the most questions for me, I think. And so ITALK voted not to recommend to the board, not to recommend approval. And so my question is, because maybe I was a little bit confused on, are we actually voting to accept or to reject these recommendations?
So the recommendation is to accept the request for an exception to the funding eligibility language in the Transnet ordinance. So yes, ITALK recommended that the board not approve this, but their basis was that they'd like the Transnet ordinance language amended. They did not object to the actual requests from MTS or NCTD. It's that this has been something that has come up for multiple years, and they'd like to have the ordinance reviewed because the criteria in the ordinance is no longer making sense in this situation. It's asking that the operators keep their annual cost increases below the consumer price index or CPI. And so there's been multiple years where that has not been possible.
But we approved it anyway, so probably those years.
And the ordinance allows for an exception if they don't meet the CPI requirement, that it allows for this exception. And so it's the board's authority to approve the exceptions from the transit operators.
And Mayor, what ITALK wanted pretty much was similar to the prior conversation, saying, hey, it's time to look at bylaws or policies or the ordinance on Transnet and see if we can align it to the realities today, and that makes sense.
Okay.
That's what they were trying to say.
Yeah, I'm kind of reading this in there, but it's not actually as clear as, as most mud piles are clear. And so and that's the reason why I'm raising these questions, because I think that our constituents, well, first of all, I think the board of directors needs to have a very clear understanding of what we're talking about. And then our constituents also need to be just as clear as we are. And so I'm not going to oppose any of this. I just think it's absolutely important that from this day forward going on that, like Teddy says, bring this stuff back and let's get this cleared up so that we don't have questions and redundancies that would never fly in my city, on my city council, for instance. I'm not going to have my park and rec committee, making decisions and creating ordinances where the city council members are responsible for creating the law. So that just, I wanted to bring that forward and bring it up. And I'm sorry about taking so much time, but.
All right. We'll move on to Councilmember Contreras.
Thank you. My question was also a little bit about 3.6, and I just want to apologize for being late. My 7 a.m. sprinter was late to pick me up, and then something happened with it, and we had to all get off, and we had to wait for the next sprinter. And as I got into Oceanside Transit Center, I see our beautiful coaster leaving without me on it. So I had to wait for the 8:16 coaster. But I've been listening to the meeting, so I didn't miss a thing. But about 3.6, I'm confused. I see where iTalk is coming from with their recommendation, and this is something that almost has become like par for the course, where we are having exceptions. But the sections that are underscored as the reason why we can have these exceptions seem to capture what these issues are. So I guess my question is, how much of it can actually be amended? Because it seems to already have the flexibility built into it. So I just want to pose that as a question for the board. And I'm just in support of us moving forward, because I don't want to continue to miss my train. So we need to make sure that we fund NCTD and MTS. But that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Downey.
I was so glad that Mayor Duncan was unavailable today, because this particular 3.6 is, as staff here knows, has been an issue I've had all along. So to help folks that don't understand how we got here, iTalk had the audit for our filing for MTS and NCTD has, this is not the first time they've asked. They have been asking every single year. And the problem with it is the exception, absolutely, we can make it work. What happened this year was MTS actually was so ahead of the game, their numbers are better, but they weren't allowed to use the matrix that explained that, because the matrix is defined by the policy that this board has. So I would like us to say definitively, we are going to put it on an agenda to at least change that to allow us to use a more accurate assessment of whether or not the two transit agencies are being more efficient. Because the irony of this, unfortunately, SANDAG didn't get the December 2005 filing, where it went into somebody else's inbox and wasn't put to the right staff person at SANDAG. So 2 days before this came, before transportation, they were informed you can't use the one you want. So then transportation had no option to not approve it. Everybody here was trying to figure out a way to make that happen, so we didn't have to go through this back and forth. It just didn't work. So it can be fixed by making the change. But more importantly, the question is, how did the question that board member Mintos asked was true. Part of the problem was when it came to transportation, they were so confused by what you said. All of our cities, the way we do things, the first reading is the first reading, and the board that makes the policy actually has to adopt something. It's not an informational item. You have to adopt that first reading, then it comes back for the second reading. That's not what they were being asked to do, and they were all confused. Everybody didn't understand, because our cities work differently, apparently, than how the policy at SANDAG was written. So again, I'll say that needs to be fixed sooner rather than later. But more importantly, if we get the right answer by fixing the Transnet language, or our interpretation of the Transnet language, that'll fix a lot of it. And also what comes to transportation, I would really beg SANDAG staff, if something is going to be coming down about another agency we're working with, you cannot, within days of the meeting, tell somebody, oh, we should have told you months ago, you can't do what you're going to do. We have to give some time frame of saying at least 2 weeks in advance or something, because I think that would have made the transportation committee meeting a little bit easier, because since they did approve and just so you know why they had to approve the waiving of the reading, is because somebody on the transportation committee wasn't happy about it and said they were going to make them read the whole thing. So it was a going back around, and so it was a gamesmanship. And so that's why getting that vote for not having to read was important. Otherwise, we would have been wasting a whole lot of time. Politics at its best. But it worked out fine. Everybody, once everything finally cleared the dust, we all stood what was going on, and it was passed the way it should have been. SANDAG was great in working with MTS and getting everything through. So it ultimately all worked out. But meanwhile, everybody who didn't know the behind the scenes baseball was confused as all get out, trying to do the right thing for our constituents in terms of getting the most efficient plans and then getting it approved the way they had to based on what the current policies was. So thank you.
Thanks for all that, Councilmember Downey. And yes, we're going to have these policies. There's a number of them lined up to come forward, and this will be prioritized. Mayor Sanchez, you're next. And then I would like a motion and a second on consent once we're done.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
Thank you. And I did want to make the motion to approve the consent calendar. And there's a second.
By Councilmember.
And I just wanted to acknowledge I was at the Transportation Committee meeting, and there was a little bit of confusion. And the way it was set up, of course, I'm just going to talk about the fair part of it, is that each agency, MTS and North County, NCTD, requested the fare increase after many studies and meetings with the public. And it was an MTS meeting just prior to the Transportation Committee where an issue came up. Now, I believe there is already a solution because each agency could, without any further approval, do things like freeze fares, etc. So there is a will and request to raise the fares because it's either you raise the fares or you cut services. And the community favored much more the idea of raising the fares. Now, how you can handle that internally, MTS has an idea. And there was a member from MTS who was at the meeting and I think made it a little more confusing, but afterwards I understood that MTS can individually, without requiring approval from either the Transportation Committee or SANDAG board, that they can do internal freezes. And that is to address certain income users. So I acknowledge that the board can address the delegation, so to speak, to Transportation Committee. And if that is the will of the board, then certainly we can handle, the board can handle that. It was a bit messy. It took the whole hour plus, almost 2. So those are thoughts, you know, sometimes it's nice to have that done in another committee and then have the more simpler questions come to us. But that is a future discussion. So that is my motion. Thank you.
Very good. We have a motion by Sanchez, a second by Chavez. Please use your devices to vote on the consent calendar, please. All righty. Okay, now we'll move on to the Active Transportation Grant Program's call for projects. We'll have a change of the guard up there. Be Jenny and Goldie. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Just while they're getting ready here, Transportation Committee asked us to come up with different alternatives. There wasn't a full consensus of which methodology to use or how to go about either geographic distribution on the grants or just straight scoring. So what TC asked us is come when you go to the board, come in and present them different alternatives. So the team will provide you some background and they will also provide you the different alternatives that we were asked to bring up.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Jenny Russo. I'm the Grants Program Manager here at SANDAG. I'm joined by my colleague, Goldie Herbon. She's the manager of the Active Transportation Program that we're going to be talking about today. And we're really excited to talk to you about the Active Transportation Grant Programs. The presentation will be in two parts. So first, Goldie is going to present the background on the program, the call for projects development, and what was provided to the Transportation Committee on May 15th. And then I'll discuss the changes that we made as a result of comments that we received at the TC's meeting and the items that we are asking for you to take action on today.
Thank you, Jenny. The Active Transportation Program, or ATP, is a discretionary state grant program that's administered by the California Transportation Commission, or CTC. In March, the CTC approved $619 million for Cycle 8 of the ATP, which is the figure shown here. The statewide segment, which is in blue, has an allocation of $310 million, or 50% of the fund, dedicated to the statewide competition. That is where all applicants across the state can contend for this funding, and applications for the statewide call were due earlier this week. Projects not awarded in the statewide competition can then compete again in either the regional or small urban and rural competition, whichever applies. For larger regions throughout the state like ours, 40% of the ATP funding, or $247 million, is distributed through an MPO in regional competitions. The San Diego region was dedicated approximately $22.5 million for Cycle 8's regional ATP, which is the main topic of today's item. I also want to take a quick note here that a minimum of 25% of funds distributed throughout each of these three competitions must benefit a disadvantaged community per ATP guidelines. So for a quick history of the regional ATP in San Diego, SANDAG has held 7 cycles of regional ATP, beginning with Cycle 1 in 2014, and the last one, Cycle 7, was released in 2024. The cycle numbers and the associated award amounts for each cycle are shown in this bar graph. And over $144 million has been awarded to 42 active transportation projects. The ATP will fund 3 different eligible project types: infrastructure, non-infrastructure, and plans. There is no funding maximum for projects, but there is a minimum grant request amount for $250,000. Additionally, the CTC funding for planned projects is capped at 2%. So due to this limit, the SANDAG Regional ATP competition for this cycle can only award $450,000 to planned projects. So if your agency is seeking planning dollars through this opportunity, only $450,000 is available. The development of the regional ATP call for projects for Cycle 8 is shown on this slide in 4 progressive steps. The development began in March when the statewide ATP guidelines were approved and released by the CTC. SANDAG staff first reviewed and identified changes to the Cycle 8 statewide call from the last cycle, and we incorporated those changes as needed into the regional call for projects. And then we held stakeholder outreach at the end of March and then into early April to gather input from jurisdictional technical staff and past applicants. We asked them to review the draft call for projects materials and asked them to speak to regional priorities. Then on March 27th, the draft call for projects and scoring criteria were first presented to the Transportation Committee for input. Staff requested feedback from them to be incorporated into a final call for projects. And on the next slide, I'll cover what we heard collectively from stakeholders and TC members and the changes that we made based on that feedback. So the feedback received from your technical staff and TC members through April are summarized on this table. And the changes that are on the right side of the table are reflected in the final call for projects, which is attachment 1 of this item. Main themes included utilizing geographic distribution, prioritizing projects that connect to transit, and streamlining the evaluation criteria. So staff also looked at the entire call for project and sought areas of improvement to simplify or reduce the administrative effort for staff and applicants. Staff took the final version of the regional ATP call for projects to TC for a second time on May 15th. So now I will cover the final evaluation criteria that was presented to TC on the 15th of May for the three different project categories. So I'm starting with the infrastructure category first. Infrastructure projects are the most commonly submitted project for this grant opportunity. And so this criteria slide is very notable in that they will directly determine where a majority of the funding will go. The bolded text indicates CTC evaluation criteria that are directly applied on the regional level to ensure alignment with ATP goals. Criterias 1, 2, and 3, however, have been specifically designed to align with the region's distinctive goals and needs. In response to direct feedback from stakeholders in TC, the weighting from previous cycle has been changed to more accurately reflect the region's project priorities, which include connectivity, project readiness, benefits to disadvantaged communities, and matching funds. The proposed scoring criteria, which is attachment 2 of your item before you today, is significantly streamlined from last cycle to reduce the administrative burden on applicants. The refinement allows us to focus on what matters the most, which is prioritizing projects that are ready to go, that heavily impact disadvantaged communities and offer high connectivity. This slide covers the evaluation criteria for non-infrastructure and planned projects, the last two remaining project categories. Just like the previous slide, the bolded text is a criteria that is directly passed through from the state to our regional call. While we stay aligned with the state, our regional evaluation criteria puts greater emphasis on 3 specific areas, and those are comprehensiveness, methodology, and community needs and support. So now I'll turn things over to Jenny to discuss the May 15th TC meeting outcome and the remaining items before you today.
So on May 15th, we presented the final call for projects to the Transportation Committee for recommendation to this board. At that meeting, TC members discussed the definitions of disadvantaged communities and requested that staff update the scoring criteria to award points to projects that benefit a disadvantaged community rather than merely be located in one. This change would broaden an applicant's ability to receive points under the criterion. And additionally, the change was made to the call for projects, which you've seen in attachment 1. Another TC member raised concerns about using geographic distribution to award funding, as the proposed methodology does not account for applicants' populations. There was no consensus among TC members on the best way to distribute the funding, so staff were asked to bring 2 to 3 options to the board to determine which methodology to include in the call for projects. So staff has prepared 3 options that the board can consider for distributing the funding as shown on this slide. For each option, I'll run through a scenario to illustrate how that methodology would look if the option were chosen. A full description of each methodology has been included in the call for projects. I want to underscore that there's many variables that affect each competitive process, including the number and the composition of applicants and projects, the amount of funding that's requested by each applicant, and whether an applicant has more than one application. We also can't predict the competitiveness of each application. I mention this so you're aware that the final results of the call for projects might differ from the examples that we have, or there may be situations that we haven't encountered in prior cycles. So we've done our best that we can to illustrate what it may look like so you can make the most informed decision. So this slide illustrates how we've traditionally used geographic distribution in calls for projects, including the most recent awards for the Smart Growth Incentive Program that you approved earlier this year. The philosophy of this option is that every applicant with a project above the minimum score has an opportunity to get an award before any single applicant can receive a second award. Proponents of the method argue for spreading grant investments across a broad spectrum of jurisdictions rather than concentrating funds in a single area. However, others argue that high-scoring projects are skipped in favor of scoring ones to achieve geographic diversity. So on this slide, we have 8 hypothetical applications from 6 agencies, each with the project score. So the projects in the purple boxes are the second highest scoring projects for City A and City B. These projects are not recommended for funding because City A and City B have already received funding for one project. So therefore they are skipped and the next city in order gets a chance at funding. In this hypothetical scenario, the total available funding is $500. Therefore, the funding is exhausted before we can return to the skip projects for funding consideration. The next option is a sub-regional geographic distribution. This method aims to fund one project in each sub-region before allowing any sub-region to receive funding for a second project. The method attempts to give all sub-regions a chance at an award. However, it does put neighboring jurisdictions within a sub-region against one another for funding. It could also result in skipping numerous high-scoring applications to ensure that each sub-region receives an award, which could be perceived as undermining the intent of the competitive process. So here we have a scenario in which 8 agencies are competing for funding across the 6 sub-regions. The available funding is $500, and the pink line denotes the cutoff for the minimum score of 75 points. So first, South County City D gets skipped because City B in South County has already received funding for the highest scoring project in that subregion. Next, North County Inland City F is also skipped because City A from the same subregion achieved the highest overall score in the project competition. And since there's money left over, the County of San Diego's unincorporated project also receives funding. The last 2 projects on the list from City H and City B are not eligible for an award because they receive less than the minimum score. The total award amount in this first round is $400, so a second round of funding considerations must be conducted to utilize all of the available funding. So in the second round, we begin at the top of the list and we fund projects in descending order of score, whether the applicant or subregion received a prior award. So in the second round, now City D from South County also receives an award. And the total amount is now $500, so no further awards can be made. So the last option is to exclude geographic distribution and base the awards solely on the project score. Supporters of the methodology say it upholds the intent of the competitive selection process. The challenge with this methodology is that the resulting awards can cluster in certain geographic areas of our region, leaving other areas out. We begin at the top of the list and fund projects in descending order of score, regardless of whether the applicant or subregion received a prior award. So first, the 3 highest scoring projects from City A and North County Inland, City B and South County, and City C and East County are funded. The remaining amount, is available is $125. Production, can you flip that back for me, please? So a partial award is made to City D's project serving South County. So in this example, only 3 subregions receive funding, and one subregion, South County, received 2 awards and 40% of the overall funding available. Because there's no limit to the amount of funding that an applicant can request through the call for projects, you can imagine how quickly this funding can be depleted. So staff considered limiting the amount of funding an applicant could request, but we don't recommend it. The average project cost from the last cycle 2 years ago exceeded $6 million, and further segmentation of these projects is typically not feasible. Placing a cap on the request amount also makes it difficult for the applicant to accept the funding, since the entire project must be phased or must be funded to take that funding. Staff is requesting that the board choose which of the 3 geographic distribution options to include in the call for projects. CTC staff have reviewed these options and deemed that they are compliant with the ATP guidelines. For awareness, there's 7 other MPOs in the state that are conducting regional calls this cycle, and 2 of them will be using a geographic distribution methodology. So since there's a high demand for active transportation projects in our region and the ATP is always oversubscribed, we've included an additional $8 million in local funding from the Transnet Active Transportation Grant Program, or ATGP, into this call for projects. The development and release of the next cycle of this grant program was planned for later this calendar year, and it was included in the FY27 budget. Combining the two calls creates a larger pool of funding for active transportation projects. It reduces the administrative costs and labor for two calls and eliminates the need for applicants to submit multiple applications. The additional funding brings the amount available to $30.5 million. So all applications would compete equally for that $30.5 million, and they would be scored using the criteria that Goldie discussed earlier. They would be recommended for funding based on the option that the board selects today. Staff would then determine which funding source, either the ATP or the ATGP, that was best suited for each project recommended for funding. And the determination of the funding source has no impact on the scoring process. Applicants that are awarded ATP funds would enter into a grant agreement with Caltrans and be subject to state program requirements and oversight. In contrast, applicants that are awarded ATGP funding would enter into a grant agreement with SANDAG and be subject to the typical grant program requirements, which include quarterly progress reports and invoices and meeting program performance measures. Progress on the ATGP funded projects is provided to the Transportation Committee quarterly. Lastly, Board Policy 35 requires that applicants submit a resolution from their governing body that the applicant commits to providing the matching funds in its application and authorizes the staff to accept the grant funding and execute a grant agreement if an award is made. Staff is requesting that the board waive the Policy 35 resolution requirement to reduce the administrative burden on applicants to receive a resolution. And because the majority of the awards under the program are going to be for the ATP program and a resolution is not necessary. So here's the timeline for the call for projects. Pending your approval today, we would submit the materials to the CTC for their August meeting. Once approved, we would release the call for a 90-day application window, and applications would be due in November. Projects would then be evaluated, and we would develop the funding recommendations by next February. In March, we would bring the results to the Transportation Committee and this board for consideration. ATGP project awards would be approved at that meeting, and the ATP recommendations would be forwarded to the CTC for consideration at their meeting in June. So I know we packed a lot of information into this presentation. To summarize, we're just looking for 3 things from you today. So first is to direct staff on which option to include in the call for projects regarding geographic distribution. Second is to waive the Board Policy 35 requirement for the resolution. And third is to adopt Resolution 2026-16, certifying the submission of the call for projects to the California Transportation Commission. So this concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you both so very much. We have quite a few public comments, so I'm going to ask the public commenters to keep your remarks as concise as possible. You will still have 2 minutes, but if you don't need to use them all, please don't. Michael?
Thank you, Chair. We have 4 in person and we have 11 online. So we'll start with Truth, followed by Cesar Javier. This is item 4, Active Transportation Program, Call for Projects.
Okay. Karina, 36 minutes late. Thanks for proving public transit sucks. Attachment 1 confirms that part of the active transportation program is to educate and or raise awareness of the use of bike and pedestrian facilities. So that can include safety education for the spoiled brats on e-bikes doing wheelies in the streets. And if SANDAG cares about pedestrians, that should include driver safety education and messaging against drunk driving, speeding, and running red lights. Goal 3.3.1 says increase the proportion of trips accomplished by biking and walking. Is that trips as in recreational trips or as a legitimate mode of transportation? Or does SANDAG not follow the letter of its own policies? Or does it even have policies at this point? Goal 3.3.2 says encourage the planning and development of complete streets. Is this what every city agreed to? Or are most cities trying to shield themselves from pervert queen Scott Wiener's stack and pack destruction of their neighborhoods? Policy 4.3.1 says the ATP will not fund cost increases. If that is true, what has been going on with the city of San Diego's projects, including the $30 million Imperial Avenue bikeway disaster? Does SANDAG follow any of its own goals and policies, or there are exemptions for some? As a pedestrian, I have yet to see any improvements in anyone's cities. There's no lighted crosswalks with audio for ADA hearing accessibility, no additional stoplights, no sidewalks, no pothole repairs, no investment in traffic enforcement. Example, Point Loma's tourist areas has crosswalks that are not even painted. There's no yield sign, no stoplight, and yet there's a pedestrian sign encouraging a death wish on Rosecrans. I agree with the equal geographic distribution of the people's tax dollars because anything less is a lack of representation. It should go by individual cities, but sub-regional could be an option if all the sub-region cities affected agree. AKA, that's a both and moment. I also agree that projects should connect to somewhere people actually go. That doesn't have to be transit decision. It could be a park or a shopping center. Transit doesn't usually go where you need it to go anyways, or when you need it to go. Isn't that right?
The next is Cesar Javier, followed by Jeff Dosick. This is item number 4.
Hold it. Hold it. Yeah. Like this. Hold it. Yeah. From the public. What is the obligation, fiduciary, City of San Diego as far as transportation? We are trying to grasp a clear picture. SANDAG is the service provider by law. Budget comes from the state, federal, and from the local. I do not know if the county contributes to this, or the cities, or the unincorporated cities. We do not understand this picture, gentlemen, ladies. That's why when we contribute our comment, we just pray that something is being done right, prayerfully being done right. Councilor Rivera, Lee, and employees of our city, what is our obligation to this procured service from SANDAG, transportation mobility? Could you present the project to us first before submitting to SANDAG so we could understand it? I heard in the public meeting that we are refunding money to SANDAG. Why? Tell us the truth. We expect the right thing to do. Before submitting that project to SANDAG, clear it to us, public. Transparency, equity.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Next is Jeff Dosick, followed by allegedly Audra. This is item 4.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Dosick. I'm a University City resident. I'm also represent District 6 on the Mobility Board for San Diego. I, along with thousands of people in the county, have benefited from what SANDAG has done for putting in bicycle infrastructure that's connected and works for us who are commuting and doing our shopping and doing our daily activities. Thank you for funding that, because about 10 years ago, I was able to get rid of my car and then bicycle to work and get around town because of the connected infrastructure that SANDAG built. We need it to continue for more of the people in our county. Please don't defund projects that are on the books to be done. If it's safe and connected, people will use it. The one thing that the negative approach that people don't like about bike lanes, but they don't realize when they see people commuting on a bike, that's one less car on the road. And that is the main theme that I'd like to point out to people. When the bike lanes are safe and they're connected, people will use them. And then you will have less cars competing for space on the road. Thank you.
Next is Ledger Audra, followed by Harry Bubbins online. This is item 4.
First of all, the Transportation Committee was engaged in conflicts of interest with Shawnee Lil Rivera being on the MTS board and also engaged in an ordinance for MTS and funding that went to it. And so there's been a cure and correct that's also been sent for that. This is going, you guys just can't be trusted with anything. And this is a bunch of merde. It's like, I mean, talk about the Hunger Games. Like, this is what you're talking about competitions, getting points, you know, talking about disadvantaged communities while you're creating a disadvantaged community by what you're doing. Like, make it make sense. I don't know whoever designed this kind of bullshit, but it's like, this is exactly why things are the way they are, because you don't do what the people want. You mismanage the money. It's like, oh, well, there's this money, so we got to go compete for it. And so we're going to do all this stuff, and I really want that money, so let's get those points and make sure we can get it to come in here. It doesn't really matter that the community doesn't want it or it's not beneficial to them. Like, you talk about geographic areas. How about each person gets a certain amount of money, and it's like, if they want something in their community, it's like, all right, you go put it in the pool. How about, and if you don't come and participate, then it goes back. I mean, there's other ways to do things that would actually be like what the people want. If you're in the community and they're like, and you're not just going to like the transportation committee and then like stakeholders, and meanwhile you educate the people on all of your propaganda, because this is a globalist agenda. You want to sit here and be like, we're trying to save the planet. Bullshit. No, you're not. Because there's cloud seeding, there's geoengineering, weather modification happening, and you don't give a shit. But you sit here and you profess to care about the climate. Fucking prove it. Because this is a bunch of bullshit, and you are the reason why these problems exist. All what you perpetrate as though you're doing something beneficial to us. No, you're doing something beneficial to you, your pockets, and your friends' pockets, and it needs to fucking stop.
Next is Harry Bubbins, followed by Quincy Bump.
Good morning. I'm Harry from Respect Bird Rock. I'm here to ask for 2 things. First, let's restore the $17 million in active transportation funding that SANDAG returned. These projects are ready to go. Mission Hills Bikeway and the Inland Rail Trail are especially important. They fill gaps, they save lives, and they protect years of planning and design work. Delaying them will only increase costs. Secondly, please complete the Regional Active Transportation Plan. We have projects on the books and need phasing and funding details to turn this list into a reality. SANDAG and you all there have made strong progress. Thank you. Now is the time to keep that momentum going. A connected, protected network that works for everyone. And for options, I think option 3 is the best one. Again, please support the Early Action Program Bikeways projects and complete the Regional Active Transportation Plan as part of this item 4. Thank you.
Next is Quincy Bump, followed by Vianney GB.
Good morning, Chair and board members. This is Quincy Bump from the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition, the regional nonprofit organization responsible for bike advocacy and active transportation advocacy. I want to urge SANDAG to fully fund and finish the Early Action Program Bikeway projects through the Active Transportation Grant Program Call for Projects, item 4. Looking beyond the EAP, there are nearly 700 miles of regional bikeways in the 2025 regional plan. That's a bigger network than ever, and these 181 projects can provide the region with a protected and connected network that's as efficient as the region's freeway system, providing a truly competitive alternative that gets people from the places where they live to where they need to go, connecting neighborhoods, employment centers, regional destinations, and transit. Our members at the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition call for SANDAG to submit an application to complete your regional active transportation plan's implementation, phasing, and funding sections to identify the projects which this board feels should be prioritized and led by SANDAG or other member agencies. I also want to add that SANDAG has made recent progress delivering these projects, and it is important that we keep building on this momentum so these investments reach their full potential. This network is larger than ever now, and it's critically important that the Regional Active Transportation Plan be completed. Thank you for your time.
Next is Vianney GB, followed by Paul the Bold.
Good morning, board members. My name is Tanya Ramirez, Legal and Policy Fellow for Circulate Planning and Policy. I want to urge SANDAG to fully fund and finish the Early Action Program bikeway projects through the Active Transportation Grant Program's Call for Projects. The Uptown Bikeways, Robinson Bikeway, and Inland Rail Trail Phase 4 projects close critical gaps in the regional active transportation network while improving sidewalks, intersections, and overall street safety. Most importantly, they provide safer, life-saving infrastructure for people who bike, walk, and roll. SANDAG has made strong progress delivering these projects in the recent years, and it's important to keep it going so these investments reach their full potential through additional connections and network completion. This network is larger than ever, and it's critically important that the Regional Active Transportation Plan be completed with an implementation plan for building out the full network in the regional plan. Thank you for your time, and please support applying for these projects and completing the Regional Active Transportation Plan with item 4. Thank you.
Next is Paul the Bold, followed by Anar Salayev.
Paul Bold, 30.5 mil available, good year for transportation. And I like it that kids can help, makes them feel more better. And I like it that they can help qualify if 75% of them get school lunches. Not sure why you limit the definition of GHGs to just a few gases when there are so many more gases that influence the weather. And you really need more than 6 subregions to match the county's diversity. I had the hard time limiting it to 13 in my non-agenda speech. Geographic distribution option 1 is 1 award per applicant. Surely many applicants could use 2 or more awards. Let's not have a bunch of rules for disadvantaged people and then limit the number of awards they can get. Slide 10, yes to option 2, sub-regional geographical distribution. Your traditional scheme leaves out too many people. You want to consider more than cities. Slide 6, keeping geographic distribution requirement makes sense. Don't know why you raised the minimum points, like, who cares if it's a good project? Let's consider them all, highest to lowest. Not exclude grants that may be good project for the people who planned it simply because of a somewhat arbitrary points threshold. Slide 7. Don't know why you care so much about project readiness with all of the time extensions you grant. Slide 5. I hope that stakeholder input was from all stakeholders, from all the people who use the services on up to the corporate bigwigs. So best of luck, and let's be truly inclusive of the entire county. By the way, the bike lanes are not
Thank you. Your time
safer.
has expired. Next is Anar Salayev, followed by Leif Gensert.
Hey, good morning, Chair and Board. My name is Anar Salayev. I'm the Executive Director of Bike San Diego. A network is only as strong as its weakest link, and SANDAG has an opportunity to close some of the most important gaps in our regional active transportation network. The Mission Hills and Old Town Bikeways, the Robinson Bikeway, Inland Rail Trail Phase 4. These are projects that have been long promised for over a decade that have seen years of planning, community engagement, environmental work, and prior public investment. As someone who regularly bikes through Uptown and Mid-City using some of the best bikeways that y'all have delivered, I can tell you that there are corridors today like West University Ave and the Gap adjacent to Robinson that force people onto dangerous streets with no safe alternative. These projects can and will deliver safer intersections, traffic calming, and safer access to schools, transit, and local businesses. We know that ridership across the region continues to grow because the protected infrastructure works, but only if the network is connected rather than isolated. Further, we support option 3. Limited funding should go to the highest scoring and most impactful projects, regardless of geography. prioritizing strongest projects first, and maximizing the safety benefits of every dollar invested. I'm urging the board to aggressively continue to pursue future ATP cycles and any available state and federal funding opportunities to backfill the funding that was returned in the current fiscal year. These projects save lives, protect previous investments, and move us closer to a more bikeable and livable San Diego for all. Thank you.
Next is Life Gensert, followed by Gambler.
Morning, SANDAG. My name is Leif Gensert. I'm the Vice President of Ride SD. We mainly focus on public transportation, but we see that bicycle infrastructure is a necessity, not only as a last mile solution. We allow bikes on buses and on our trolley. So for people that live further away, it is a great opportunity to use public transport for biking. It is also bicycle infrastructure is also useful where public transport cannot help. Trips to the grocery stores, for example, are usually much better served by walking and by cycling. Therefore, we also advocate for better bicycle infrastructure outlined. As my previous speaker said, we want to look at the Mission Hills and Old Town bikeways, the North City bikeways, Robinson Bikeway, the Inland Rail Trail, and so on. Please prioritize these projects and don't just let the money sit there. Thank you very much.
Next is Gambler, followed by Paul Jameson.
Hey, fucktards, how you guys doing? I just want to let everyone know that is sitting in this room that the registrar of voters will shortly be doing citizenship sweeps. They're obligated to by the NVRA subsection 8. The only issue right now is that they're trying to pretend that they actually did something. Now, I want to go in and let you guys all know this because the bike lanes have destroyed so many businesses. I know that was part of the goal, you know, the agenda, whatever, bullshit. But let me go in and let you know something. As soon as we discovered the non-citizens voting, we'll tie that back to the NGOs that voted for them. And yeah, that goes along with the whole bike lane bullshit too. Because, you know, the only way that you could get that to really work is if you burn down San Diego and rebuild it from the scratch. Go in and set up the roads you're going. Are you going to do the same thing that Karen Bass did, burn down the city? But before you do that, we're going to go in and fix the elections. You guys don't deserve to be there. You guys will be there as soon as we have clean and honest elections. So I encourage the registrar voters to quickly as possibly, you know, vet the registrations and make sure that there's no non-citizens. And as soon as we do that, we can determine the last election didn't really count. We're going to have to redo that. Until after they certify it, just waste more money. I mean, I know that's part of your guys' goal too. So are we going to continue playing same? We're going to start working for the people. Question. Are you guys going to start working?
Thank you. Your time has expired. Next is Paul Jameson, followed by Jason Vance.
Hi, my name is Paul Jameson. I'd like to encourage SANDAG to fully fund the Early Action Program bikeway projects through the Active Transportation Program. The Mission Hills, Old Town, Robinson, and Phase 4 Inland Rail Trail bikeways fill dangerous gaps in our regional bike lane network and connect to projects that improve the safety of our streets for all residents. I've personally been looking forward to using the Robinson Bikeway since it was announced 13 years ago. I understand 17 million was recently returned to the state for these bikeway projects due to missed deadlines. This was not discussed here, but instead just removed from the fiscal 27 budget last month that the board approved. So I want to express both my support for these projects, making any sensible changes required to meet the funding deadlines, and ideally informing the public at these board meetings when state ATP funds are returned. I want to thank SANDAG for their strong progress in building bike lane networks, despite opposition from drivers who might be inconvenienced by them. I often ride several SANDAG bikeways, including Pershing, Meade, Bachman, 4th and 5th Ave, to connect to transit, support local businesses, and get to appointments. SANDAG bikeways have hugely improved my and many others' safety. They're a very positive contrast to local cities that are spending millions of dollars to remove safe bike infrastructure, even on streets with high student ridership, just so drivers can go faster. So it's critical that the Regional Active Transportation Plan be completed with an implementation plan for building out the full network in the regional plan. Please support applying for these projects and completing the Regional Active Transportation Plan in this item number 4. Thank you.
Next is Jason Vance, followed by our last public comment, phone number ending in 8813.
Good morning. I'm Jason, staff at the Bike Coalition. I commute on the Pershing Bikeway daily, and it's been life-changing. It allows me to quickly and safely get downtown. For reference, it takes about an hour if I take the 2 bus, but biking, it only takes 15 minutes. And I could never have had such an amazing commute without the new Pershing Bikeway. So that said, the bike community is incredibly grateful for SANDAG's ongoing progress towards building critical active transportation projects. And we're hopeful that every one of the early action program projects will get built. However, there are 4 unfunded projects that leave really dangerous gaps in our bike network, which is going to discourage ridership, lead to injuries, and death. Of these 4, Mission Hills, Old Town, and Robinson Bikeways, these address SANDAG's safety-focused network. It's the 6% of roadways in our region where more than half of the serious and fatal crashes occur. We cannot delay these projects. Additionally, the Inland Rail Trail Phase 4 will connect people from Oceanside all the way to Escondido on a family-friendly, Class 1 shared-use path. We must give San Diegans safe bike connections to the places they need to go. These projects were approved by the board back in 2013. They're also some of the most challenging and costly, but the benefits far outweigh the costs. So SANDAG must aggressively pursue all funding opportunities to complete the early action program. I urge the board to support option 3 so that the highest scoring projects get funded regardless of the location. Thank you.
A last public comment, phone number ending in 8813. This is item 4.
Phone Swallow here. So, yeah, it always sounds so, $30 million for active transportation. It always sounds so positive, right? Healthy, sustainable, equitable. And behind the marketing this is just another step toward the vision laid out for the United Nations agenda for the 21st century. It's not bullshit. It's what's so, where planners increasingly shape how people move, where they live, how communities are designed. Been saying this for years, but yeah, welcome. The public is sold the illusion of freedom through grants, incentives, and subsidies. We'll pay for this, we'll build that, but nothing is free. We pay for it all with our tax dollars. And many people feel those dollars are being used to steer the behavior rather than simply provide infrastructure that the people can actually use, not some stupid ass bike lanes. So the more you incentivize one mode of transportation over another, the more governmental influences personal choices, it's just more social engineering. And you can call it active transportation, and it's what it really is fishbowl fucking living. More monitoring, more planning, more data, more systems deciding what's best for us instead of trusting people to make their own choices. And yeah, that's what it's about. You guys claim to serve the public and then stop, it's just so gross. It's all so gross. And guess what? I've attended several meetings. I've spoken to residents of Mission Hills, and the majority of residents there are so irate about these stupid bike
Thank you.
lane.
Your time has expired. That concludes our public comment on this item, Chair.
Very good. Thank you all. All right. We have quite a few comments on the board too. I just want to give you all a preview. We're going to take the next two items out of order. We have to take them all, so we'll probably need to be extending this meeting. So keep that in mind as you're making your comments. I would like to go to any members of the Transportation Committee who were at that Transportation Committee to comment on this first. I see Mayor Sanchez is up first, and she is on that committee. And if anybody else is, if you could raise your hands after Mayor Sanchez, otherwise I'll go in order of who's up here.
Right. Thank you very much. I am a member of the Transportation Committee, as is Council Member Mendoza. And I will say that I did attend. I do want to say there was only one voice that was actually against geographic distribution. The other voices are definitely supportive of geographic distribution. We did get the presentation by staff, starting with the state requirements and criteria. And that is a program that is very difficult for, say, most of the cities in the San Diego County region. That would be able to compete and actually be successful. So yes, you could apply, but the criteria is such that mostly it would be City of San Diego, and I believe City of National City has been successful in competing, which I'm very, very jealous of. But as to the balance of the cities in San Diego County and last cycle's grants were probably the first time that I believe all of the cities that applied actually got a grant, and were finally able to move forward projects that had been sitting around for a long time. Every city has a need to be able to move their communities, be it, and I hear a lot of support for bicycle projects, but be it microtransit, there are a lot of different ways that we're trying to move our communities, our people, residents, within our cities, and to, of course, assure that we meet our climate action goals. So I will say that, again, that there was a lot of discussion at the meeting, and that I would just the one voice was for, and that was Councilmember Sean Elo Rivera. Even though I did point out, look, if it was no geographic, then traditionally what has happened is all the funds go south of 8, and no other cities really are able to qualify for any kind of funding. And City of San Diego especially can qualify for this at the state level and probably get a lot more funds. I definitely support combining the two programs, so we get at $30.5 million. That's I really appreciated staff's recommending that, and that is part of the request here. So my motion would be for number one, which would be the geographic distribution. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Mendoza, anything to add?
Just to clarify your motion, the traditional geographic distribution or the sub-regional?
Traditional.
Traditional. Okay. And I would support that also.
That would be a second.
Yes, that would be a second.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, the City of Lemon Grove, we are south of the 8, and we have been a beneficiary of this grant, our Connect Main Street project in particular, which is just an amazing project. Yes, I fully support the motion, the Transportation Committee, that would reflect most of the members of the Transportation Committee also.
Thank you for that input. Okay, we'll go to Vice Mayor Molina.
Thank you very much, Chair Huebner.
Thank you. At the beginning of the year, I did propose to the executive committee to recommend leveraging appropriate available funding to award capital projects to the cities that at the time had proposed projects that had a high scoring ultimate level to their projects, but they were in danger of losing funding due to the introduction of geographic distribution mid-cycle. Thankfully, the funding was made available, and I am grateful for that. At the time, I did make a request and make a case that geographic distribution is a fine idea to introduce, but after to introduce into future funding considerations. But I advocated that an exhaustive narrative had to be made, an exhaustive evaluation, a conversation, and direction from the policy committees, the stakeholders, the board, and that is what's happening today. So I am grateful for that. Thank you very much to our CEO, Mario Orso, and all of SANDAG's staff for making space for this conversation, because that's exactly how to implement this type of change. Though I am in favor of option 3, which was presented today, which is to score projects per the criteria that was one of the slides indicated how the points structure happens. There is a very good way that all projects are evaluated. It is described in the policy or the when a grant is or when a request for projects is issued, there is a well-detailed explanation for how projects will be scored. So that is already in place. Projects get scored. Ultimately, SANDAG staff and the evaluation committee arrives at a point, at a score sheet, I guess, and all of the projects are evaluated. It is my belief that that is how projects should then be funded. Right, project 1, 2, 3, 4. So geographic distribution then does end up taking all of that scoring and then adding another element to it. So it is my intent that we should stick to the scoring. That is the best, most fair way to truly evaluate a project. SANDAG has, will evaluate the best projects to move forward, and that is the most fair way to do it. So I would prefer that we do select option 3. However, I am part of the whole here, and I would, I would be respectful of the majority of the opinion here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll go to Councilmember Corina Contreras.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's been a lot of work put into this. And I just want to say that if it weren't for creating safer streets for everybody, I would have to go purchase a car. And I've been really fortunate to be able to utilize active transportation and public transit. And so when I look at how we're going to distribute such a limited number of funds so that most people can benefit, so that we can have safe connectivity for communities throughout the San Diego region, I can see, where folks might want to continue maybe with like an option 3. But I feel like option 1 has... It's almost like if you take option 3 and ensure that every city gets a little bite. So I just, being in North County, having very limited projects that get funded, I really want to see everywhere in the San Diego region have a little bit of funding, because I just think it's a responsibility that we have to the taxpayers to ensure that everybody in the region can benefit from the tax dollars that are going into this pot. So I will be supporting option 1. What I would really recommend, though, is that anytime we do, this is a pretty big policy change or direction in the sense that some projects are going to potentially be left out. So I would love to see a follow-up analysis after this whole process goes through, just to see what the impacts were. You know, I don't know if we can just plug it into our activity-based model and, you know, even come up with different scenarios as to how projects would score. Maybe for a future discussion, having some more information like that could be great. But yeah, I'm really, really thankful. And I just have to highlight one last thing that I'm hearing from the public over and over is that it is really unacceptable for us to get so far behind that we have to give state funds back because those funds are never guaranteed in the future. And so, you know, being able to have Mission Hills, Robinson, and the Inland Rail Trail completed, those are just critical for the region as well. So thank you so much. I'll be supporting the motion on the floor.
Thank you. Councilmember Pikus.
3 real quick points. One, I had a question that you said about policy 36, was it? About having to require a resolution from the city to do the grant. Is there any other mechanism to make sure that the matching funds get paid? Can you require the resolution after the grant was made, you know, awarded, or require that their dollars go first? Or is it, I just want to see if there's an enforcement mechanism that the matching funds actually do happen.
There is enforcement in the grant agreement that would result from it. The policy is just intending to make sure like it gets to your eyes before a staff member commits to something and then it turns out that you can and you run into a challenge with it. It's just to escalate that portion up front so people are aware of what's being applied for. But it is required in the grant agreement itself, so they'd be contractually bound.
But it's the city that applies, so they presumably they have an idea that they're going to be on the hook for that.
Yes.
Thank you very much. But I guess the city council could throw a wrench into it after you award the grant, I take it.
Potentially.
I think that's unlikely, so I guess it's okay to get rid of policy 36. My second point was, again, we were discussing the various options for distribution, and I was kind of leaning towards option 2 as a compromise, but I think Mayor Sanchez had, you know, made a pretty good case, and she's on the transportation committee, so she knows better than me about this. And I can't help thinking that yes, some geographic regions, because of geography, sort of have a thumb on the scale, and automatically their projects seem to score higher. You know, and I was just looking out the window. I see 3 trolley lines and a couple bus lines, and ideally, you could easily do projects here where you're trying to increase connectivity between all these bus lines, whereas out in Vista or Oceanside, stops are fewer and farther between, and the transportation projects are harder to score high. So I'm also in favor of option 1, so to avoid the appearance of geographic favoritism. And as Mayor Sanchez had pointed out, there is enough data already to say that yes, a lot of these projects do get concentrated in one region. So let's go with option number 1 and kind of spread it out. And next time this comes up, as Councilwoman Contreras pointed out, let's reevaluate this and revisit this decision. But at least we'll have some data with option 1 for a while. And I think that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Casares.
Thank you. I really want to just echo a lot of what Councilmember Contreras was saying. I agree that option 1, the traditional geographic distribution, is going to be our best choice. I don't like the idea of the option 2. It doesn't sound like there's been a lot of advocacy for it. But like all of the East County cities competing against one another, all of the South County cities competing against one another, that doesn't necessarily sound like a great idea. I understand why some of the like South County cities would be advocating for no geographic distribution. However, since they are still individual cities, I think it is very likely that even with option 1, they will still end up with a more competitive advantage. And because of the other criteria. So I think that is still mostly going to remain in place with option one, and I think that's okay. So I support option one. What I would really like to see, and I understand why it wasn't presented today, because it'd be both time consuming and would, for all the various cities, help kind of like weigh our options. But I think after we make a decision on this, it would be useful to see in the last couple of rounds, had we done whatever we decide on, which it sounds like it's going to maybe be option one, what funding differences we would have seen in previous cycles, so that we can compare it after we do this to the study of future, of how this ended up and where it went. Because then right now we're doing some guessing with context, but I would really like to see where previous projects would have fallen on this after we make the decision, just so we can compare it moving forward. But I'm going to be supportive of the motion today, and thank you to Mayor Sanchez for making it.
Thank you, Mayor Minto.
The longer you're around here, it seems like things keep coming around, and sometimes they get a little bit better, sometimes maybe not. So it's interesting listening to speakers. And the reason why I say that is because when you represent an organization, for instance, it's very easy to advocate only for what you're interested in. I do find that that's important for us to hear what people are interested in. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we have to make decisions all across the board. So as I also agree with option number one, and my only concern about it is that, let me say this first. I think it's the closest to local control, because I want, if active transportation in my community means bicycle lanes, I'm going to advocate for that. And I'm going to want my staff to actually create this most solid, most dynamic plan so that we score highly to get those lanes. But if it's crosswalks, like one of the speakers said, that has all of the newest technology in it, that has where alerts for pedestrians crossing, or to have people that are hearing impaired or vision impaired or whatever, to get them in a safe way across the street, I'm going to advocate for that the best. And I think option one allows us to do that. But local controls, what we all talk about so often, and I don't want to be part of an organization that dictates that, no, this is the only thing that we're going to give money for. Tell me what is best for your community, and what we'll do is we'll see how we can get money for that, because that's how it's fair. It's more balanced that way. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Maxon, you're up.
I hope the board does consider a sub-regional. However, the current example here doesn't seem fair by population. If this were to be amended to have more of an equitable distribution of population, because right now the city of San Diego, which is a very large number, if they were to, compete against these smaller regions, or they would be competing against the smaller regions, a lot more people are missing out. And the same for the unincorporated area, of course. We're 550,000, and when we miss out, we miss out. So if that were redone to try to consider population, I mean, right now the county's broken up by 5 supervisorial districts, so that is done. But whatever would account for San Diego at over 1 million, and we're 500,000. And I don't think, adding up the math, that these other sub-regional categories meet those numbers. They certainly don't meet 1 million. You have to somehow balance the needs of all of the population. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. A couple things. I just want to share appreciation for the work that was done from a staff standpoint following the Transportation Committee meeting to at least present options for us to understand. And I appreciate hearing from all of our various colleagues here. I think I understand how much we're all trying to think of this from a regional perspective, which is our role here at SANDAG. But also, of course, you're advocating for each of your individual jurisdictions, as I certainly will as well. I do have a couple questions because of the shift, considering the broader context that might be helpful here. One is, I know this grant cycle, we're looking at the potential of, it looks like about $30 million between the two combined. How much was offered in the previous grant cycle or two?
61.
Even a rough number.
I think 60.
61,
If the table was
Cycle
correct.
7 was $6 million. That was the last cycle in 2024.
Slide 3 production, if you want to pull that up.
And then cycle 6 prior to that was 61 million.
Okay, so we've seen some significant variation year over year as a result. About how many applications do we typically see? And then I know it's hard to say this, but in those two separate years, how many applications were ultimately awarded?
It's usually somewhere total applications, I'd say around 20, sometimes 25. And it really varies cycle by cycle of how much we can award, because it depends on how much funding someone asks for in general. We do have some statistics on that. Let me find it to give you an idea. So cycle 6, average award was about $4 million. We only awarded 3 projects because the size of those projects that were highly ranking took up a lot more of that funding. So it really depends on, like I was saying earlier, the universe of what people ask for. If they ask for very large amounts and we don't have enough to give, we may fund fewer projects versus if top scoring projects ask for a lot less, then we can kind of dip farther into the list. It's really hard to compare cycle to cycle.
What about in cycle 5 when there was $60 million available? Maybe a better comparison when.
Cycle 5, the average ask was about 4.9 and we awarded on average 8. So a lot different, but that's because those were larger dollar projects that were in there. But you saw the average amount requested was a lot lower. It's just those top scoring ones were higher.
And how many awards were given out in that?
In cycle 6 or cycle 5,
yeah.
let me see.
Well, while they're looking for the numbers, council member, we push also we looked into the alternative of putting a cap of the grant that could be, you know, the example. Even the chairwoman brought it up, said, well, why don't you see if there's 6 sub-regions, why don't you do it a $5 million cap? And one of the questions, and it was presented at the presentation, it was mentioned that we seem to be seeing that, of course, the prices are going up and some of the local cities are counting to be basically almost 100% if we would to limit the amount of the cities, if they get awarded, let's say 5 for a $10 million or $8 million job, they may not have the $3 million to be able to move forward with the full funding. But I'll let Jenny, now that she has the data, continue.
Cycle 5, we awarded 2 projects. The largest one was 12 million and the other one was 3.9. So you can see when you get a really big project, it takes up a lot of your funding.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. That helps to understand contextually, because at some point, I think this is why I agree with Councilmember Contreras that the data is actually really important, because I mean, if we were going to option 1, I totally understand the desire to have a balance so that every jurisdiction has an ability to get an award. We'd have to have 20 awards given out in order to accomplish that. So at some point, this is a little bit of a silly exercise to suggest that, because we'd have to have probably hundreds of millions of dollars of funding available to actually achieve that. And at the end of the day, we're also going through this exercise of scoring by the criteria that's already been mapped out. And part of me would argue that the options that we're considering now are actually less important than the actual scoring mechanism, because I think that's where some of how we see favorability towards population size, density, et cetera, might naturally be included there. Whereas there is some degree of need and balance that's also important to consider. I totally understand if in some cases in the past you end up seeing funding go towards certain regions within the county even. We have this discussion in the city of San Diego all the time, and I'm a council member with a district that is north of the 8. I often argue that that does not mean that there are not communities north of the 8 that don't have needs, but I also immediately recognize that we as a county and a city have often prioritized funding over history that has left communities south of the 8 underfunded. Just naturally has happened. It's also happened significantly in unincorporated areas in San Diego, and I think Robin just pointed out, I mean, their population, I know we might ignore it sometimes, but that's 500,000 people. That's larger than most of the jurisdictions here. And so I would naturally, on behalf of the city of San Diego, gravitate towards option 3, but at the same time also recognize that that may not necessarily give a fair proportion to meet projects that should at least be moving in every portion of the county. And so I would make a pitch here that we really should consider option 2. I don't think it'll be a huge issue here, considering in the last 2 years, we haven't even given enough awards for option 2 to be an issue, because again, we'd have to have more than a half dozen awards to reach all of those areas. But, you know, I think we should let the scoring really guide what the need is, as opposed to just breaking it out by geography. And again, from a logistical standpoint, we're not going to be giving out 20 awards. So if that is the case, let's let the scoring speak for itself rather than just thinking about broad geography. Because what'll happen is it'll just be the broad scoring, and if it's only 4 awards, for example, there's only going to be 4 cities getting it either way, or 4 regions getting it anyway. So that would be my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Jones?
Thank you so much, Chair. So I was out in Valley Center yesterday, and they were saying to me, you know, we have a lot of tax dollars that are actually generated here, and yet we have no, well, they feel this way. We get no love out here in Valley Center. And, you know, I have to say, you know, North County, I think as a whole, we tend to get less money. So the geographic part is important to me as well. You know, looking at option 2, I do prefer option 2. I can and get on board with option 1. The one thing that I didn't see in the criteria, and maybe I missed it, is geographically where you're located, because the people that are further out that need to get to the job centers, you know, they might not be considered a disadvantaged neighborhood or community, but they kind of are disadvantaged for the simple fact that they're further away. And sometimes it's because they want to live in a rural area, which, you know, we need to respect that. Then also sometimes it's because they're on tribal land, or they're, you know, they're out in the further reaches due to financial reasons. So I think, you know, just kind of moving forward, you know, this is going to be a shift what we're doing now, but I'd like to further explore how we can actually serve more of our rural areas. I'm not sure if this will actually do it, and maybe staff can, you know, weigh in on this, whether you think that we will be able to help our further reaches.
I think Mayor Sanchez got us in that process during TC, and in the presentation, and the team can provide more feedback, but there is a tweak, and it's in the presentation, but it's probably not that pointed out. The prior scoring was if you're in a disadvantaged community, and Mayor Sanchez proposed and TC approved that it's if you are in or serving or benefiting a disadvantaged community within all the definitions that you could find for a disadvantaged community. So that technically opened the envelope. I don't know, Jenny or Goldie, if you want to expand more.
Yeah, so the prior criteria for disadvantaged community meant you had to be physically located. The project had to be physically located in a disadvantaged community. So the input we received from Transportation Committee was, well, what if you're serving a disadvantaged community? The project just happened to be located there, but you're making that connection that's missing. The criteria has been changed now. So as long as you are providing a benefit, so you're making up those connections, and disadvantaged communities are receiving benefit from that project, those would be eligible to receive points now. So it does not matter where that project is located.
Well, I was hoping that's what it meant, but I wanted to make sure that that was exactly what it meant. So, all right. Well, thank you for that. I too will support the first option. Thank you, Mayor Sanchez, for that. And that's it. Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Chavez.
I just want to address the comments when we say historically we're favoring south of the 8. Well, south of the 8, we also have 100,000 people coming across the border every single day. And I'm sorry, but a lot of the northern cities don't have these daytime visitors that congest our traffic on our freeways. And we're going to have Otay Mesa East opening up, and we have all the import export through Otay Mesa right now, the border crossing. So, and we also have 2.4 million people coming monthly through the blue line. And I'm all for equitable distribution. I'm not fighting anyone here, but we have to be mindful that when we're saying we're favoring south of the 8, but you don't have this daytime visitors that we house every single day and on a monthly basis that are gonna keep growing. We're not gonna cut back. And, I'm sorry, I just had to press the button because I understand, I hear everyone, and I'm a team player. Obviously, I'm going to be supporting option 1, definitely. But let's be mindful that when it comes back to south of the 8, remember we're grandfathering in all these people that don't live with us, don't live in our cities, but we are the ones who are helping with this distribution. Obviously, we need a little bit more funding because we have all these daytime visitors and a lot of people that we can house that are our workforce as well, that are our students and tourism. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I don't mean to sound a little harsh, but let's be mindful when we're talking about south of the 8. And historically, we've been underserved with all this big population that we have crossing the border every single day. Again, respectfully.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I will tell you that the coastal folks are looking at each other here. We appreciate what you're saying because we too have a massive influx of folks coming to our beaches and the sites that we have, especially right now during the fair, which also happens to be Surf Cup. They decided to have 344 teams come over the next week during the fair. So it's a little bit insane. So we appreciate what you're saying and understand it because we have our own experience of that sort of thing. NCTD, Councilmember Edson.
Yes, this is not with my NCTD hat on per se, but I did attend the TC meeting. I'm alternate on TC, so I attended the meeting where this was discussed. And as Mayor Sanchez reported, the committee as a whole supported option 1, the traditional geographic distribution. Also, there was widespread interest in what was just mentioned. Mario, you stole my thunder, by the way, but of updating the benefits to disadvantaged communities, scoring criteria to emphasize the project's DAC benefits over its proximity to a DAC, because it does seek to broaden the ability for applicants to qualify for DAC points and be competitive. So I just wanted to mention that I was there and back up what was said.
Thank you so much. Mayor Ehlers?
Yeah, I'm going to go just a little different place. I had a question for staff about the combining of the two programs and how that's going to work. I think you said that the source of the funding will be decided after and don't they have different criteria? If I go to page 90, section 3.3, you have the two different criteria. How do we combine them and decide where the source comes from afterwards?
So I'm glad you asked that question. There's a difference in project delivery if you receive an ATP grant versus what we look for on our local project. So for the ATP, a project could take as many as 7 to 8 years to be implemented. With our Transnet dollars, we ask that those projects are completed within 3 years. So that's one factor that we would look at is what's the timeline that someone asks for funding, how quickly would they be able to implement this project, and which of those two would be a better fit for that, because we want to use our regional dollars on things that could be completed sooner. Also looking at maybe the complexity of projects. So folks can ask for state-only dollars instead of the federal dollars that are mixed into the state program. So if there's a really simple project that maybe isn't going to meet like NEPA or something like that, we could consider using transit dollars for those. So anything to try and get these projects implemented as quickly, reduce the burden on them. That's what we're going to be looking for, and really digging into the composition of the application, what the project is, to make sure that we're putting the dollars so that that can be successfully completed.
But the criteria for the two different, for ATP versus ATPG, it's slightly different. They overlap, but they're different. So you made a comment about the applicant should say if they have a preference for state dollars versus, okay, cool. So with that, and I really appreciated Mayor Minto's comment about local control, of course. In this case, there's a new bill that just got an amend, SB 569, for those that don't know about it. It's becoming an issue in Encinitas, and it makes a difference whether you take state or SANDAG money here, because if this passes, it's going to put certain requirements on the local jurisdiction if they ever want to make a modification within 20 years of that bike lane. So I would warn that be very, very careful that local control is being usurped every day. And it was a gut and amend. It came up last week. We commented on it. It got gutted again and changed, and it's gotten changed yet again. So just a warning for everybody here. I noted that even one of the public speakers spoke about the project indirectly. So with that, I agree with the geographic distribution. I'll support option 1. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Patel.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to speak up on behalf of course, the city of Carlsbad, but also North County communities. I support the option that's been presented. And thank you, Mayor Sanchez, for making the motion. I feel like looking at it from just from the fair shot at funding. And I know that we've been talking about North County, South County, all the different regions. And I do hope that we think about it holistically. We do serve all of our residents, whether we're from North County, South County, whatever else. I think we're all here making sure, hopefully, that we are representing our entire constituency, whether it's the city of Carlsbad or the rest of the county. One thing that I do want to say is that option 1 for me, it seemed like really does look at it from the context of not making it too complex. You actually have the ability to really look at the project and then hopefully give the fairest shot to each project. And then the other piece, yes, I just want to echo the sentiments that, North County communities do see a lot of foot traffic, whether it's from folks coming up to work in our communities or coming into our communities to work. We are at least in the city of Carlsbad, I can definitely say we are a huge economic driver in that particular regard. We also, of course, have millions of visitors that come in. It's crazy. The locals don't get to go out much. I can tell you that because we have so many people that are coming into our towns. And then I think one thing that we can all agree on, I know we all are saying the same thing, is that safe infrastructure is for everyone that is coming into our communities, whether it's our residents or visitors. So I definitely support option 1 and really appreciate the discussion today. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Molina, you had more to add?
When Member Lee was making his comments, I was super inspired, but he covered everything. So I just want to give him props. Thank you.
Thanks. And Mayor Sanchez, you're up on the board again.
Yes, thank you. Just to say thank you so much for all of the comments, and any way that we can support at the state level, across for National City, Chula Vista, San Diego. I think that's where we can get the support for the areas that definitely have, like, this is a metropolitan area, and so for the locals, all of us, and then at the state level, if we can somehow all together, all the cities support their requests at the state level. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, good discussion, everybody. I think it's important to all of us that was demonstrated that we provide safe passage no matter what your mode is. This one is, by foot, by bike, by skateboard, whatever it is. So appreciate the good discussion. I'm pleased with where we landed, and I'll call for the vote. El Cajon? Very good. All righty. We'll now move on to the Youth Opportunity Pass item. And this is Shanae to give us our presentation. And Antoinette.
Good morning, Shanae Pickney-Forrest, Director of Internal Controls. Today I'm presenting the results of the Internal Control Assessment of the Youth Opportunity Pass Pilot Program, which I'll be referring to as the YOP program. In today's presentation, I'll briefly discuss background and context for the review, the objective, scope, and methodology, the 5 questions that were reviewed, and the summary of the observations, and then I will discuss recommendations. For background and context, at the May 8th board meeting, the Board of Directors directed staff to return within 45 days to present an analysis of the internal controls in place over the YOP program. As a result of the board's request, the assessment focused on reviewing internal controls related to SANDAG's pilot programs, board policy, and compliance. To address compliance, the Office of General Counsel conducted a separate legal analysis to determine whether SANDAG distributed YOP funds in compliance with board policies and the ordinance. This review looked at the internal processes related to the YOP program to better inform operational procedures for pilot programs going forward. The scope and methodology is listed here. I will not go through it in detail, but I did look at various methods. I did utilize various methods to obtain information and develop observations. The 5 questions that were explored are noted here, and I will go through each one and summarize. So for question 1, what was the applicable guidance? This is not a comprehensive list, but of note was Board Policy 29, the Regional Fare Policy, and the Comprehensive Fare Ordinance. These set guidelines for setting transit fares and implementing the fare structure for the San Diego region. Also of note was the Federal Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality, also known as CMAQ Improvement Plan. This is a program administered by the FHWA that allows states and local governments to use funds to support pilot services. For question 2, what are the details of the YOP pilot? The details are noted here. Most notably, the pilot was launched in May 2022. And at the inception of the program, additional funding resources were identified as being necessary to continue the YOP program long term. Question number 3, what are the board's and the Transportation Committee's roles related to the YOP program? It was important to understand the oversight duties of these 2 bodies. In general, the board's duties include reviewing and revising SANDAG's bylaws and policies and conducting fiscal oversight, including budget approval and funding allocations. The Transportation Committee's responsibilities of note included recommending funding allocations to the board and being responsible for any amendments to the fare ordinance. Question number 4. What were the funds used? How much were paid? And how were they distributed? So the YOP program was funded using 3 sources of funds, the CMAQ operating assistance. These funds are limited to new transit services, strategies, and incremental cost of expanding existing transit services. It used CMAQ capital assistance. These funds can be used to establish new or expanded transportation projects or programs that reduce emissions. And of note, the CMAQ funding permits pilot periods beyond a 12-month period. There was also funding from the County of San Diego. Those funds were used in response to the public health and negative economic impacts of the pandemic. So how much was expended? Between fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2025, the YOP program expended approximately $20.7 million. For these 3 fiscal years, SANDAG reimbursed the transit operators for recovery of lost revenue due to the fare-free YOP pass. CMAQ guidance states that eligible uses for CMAQ include projects or programs that shift travel demand to non-peak hours or other transportation modes that include increasing vehicle occupancy or otherwise reducing demand through initiatives. Additionally, the FHWA publication of final guidance on CMAQ allows CMAQ funds for operational support for up to 3 years. In fiscal year 26, in lieu of SANDAG reimbursing transit operators for recovery of lost revenue, SANDAG provides transit operators with funding that the operators can use for eligible capital projects. The FHA final guidance allows CMAQ capital funds to be used to establish new or expanded transportation projects or programs that reduce emissions, including capital investments in transportation infrastructure or other capital projects. So for fiscal year 26, transit operators use CMAQ funds for capital projects, and the operators program other funds in their own budgets to operate the YOP. The transportation industry has encouraged innovation in increasing mobility, improving air quality, and providing equitable outcomes. As such, the review included a best practice comparison to see how other entities manage their transportation-related pilot projects, with the goal being to see if there were any areas for improvement for SANDAG. So the Lane Transit District located in Oregon was reviewed. Similarly to SANDAG, in reading their literature, they had previous experience with transportation-related pilot projects, but indicated that they did not have any formal guidance for monitoring their pilot programs. So as a result, they created a pilot evaluation framework as a guidance for their projects, which focused on planning, implementation, and evaluation activities. In comparing their framework against SANDAG activities, some of the key activities identified currently exist at SANDAG. These include, but are not limited to, establishing the objectives of the pilot program, creating a data collection, monitoring, and evaluation plan, and establishing expected service levels. Looking at areas for improvement, these are informative to the recommendations I will highlight in a moment. A few of the notable areas for improvement centered on, in the planning stage, identifying other actions needed, and updating policies and procedures. In the case of the YOP program, it was initially launched as a pilot. The board policy defines pilot as 12 months. However, the program was funded using federal CMAQ funds, which permits pilot periods beyond a 12-month period. So during the planning phase of the YOP pilot, the board policy and ordinance should have been compared against funding conditions of the YOP. If done, the conflicts in the pilot timelines may have been properly identified and vetted by staff, the board, and legal counsel. This vetting may have led to a more robust discussion on the front end about the short and longer term goals of the program. To that end, the short and longer term goals of the program include preparing for the end of the pilot, which was another area for improvement when comparing SANDAG to the LTD framework. Preparing for the end of the pilot includes having a clear and anticipated path regarding pilot options. So whether to discontinue, whether to continue, or whether to transition the pilot to another entity. With each of these decisions, there are logistical, administrative, and funding details that need to be clearly discussed, understood, and agreed upon to run the pilot effectively. So with that, there were 4 recommendations based on this review. First, the Office of General Counsel, in coordination with the Internal Controls Director and the Administration Department, should continue its existing review of SANDAG policies and procedures for needed updates, obsolescence, alignment, and redundancies between guidance. Prior to this YOP assessment in January 2026, SANDAG had already begun this process, and it's advised to continue. Secondly, SANDAG should establish a method for communicating relevant policies and ordinances within board and committee agenda items. By communicating the relevant policies and procedures, all parties are on notice about the parameters that will guide the discussion and decision-making for those agenda items. And during the meetings, any confusions, questions, clarifications, and next steps can be discussed in its proper context. Third, SANDAG should enhance the clarity of project reports by presenting key information such as funding sources, allowable uses, budgeted versus actual amounts, et cetera, in a format that provides a more seamless, continuous view over time. And lastly, SANDAG should develop a cohesive guidance that provides a consistent structure for planning, implementing, monitoring, and properly closing out projects and initiatives. And with that, I can take any questions.
Okay, before we go to questions, we'll go to the public. And this, Antoinette, do you have part of a presentation?
I am just here for questions on the
Okay.
YOP program and history.
Okay, great. So we'll hold off on asking you any questions, should there be any, and we'll go straight to Michael with public comments.
Sure. If you're online and want to speak on item number 6, please raise your hand now. We have 3 in person. This is Truth, followed by Cesar Javier. This is item 6. And we have 3 in person and 2 online.
Thanks to whoever saw a need for an assessment of the youth opportunity at trafficking pass, because the majority of this board obviously don't care what the consequences are. They just love feel-good, fuzzy virtue signaling at a cost of $34 to $92 million over 4 years with zero transparency, aka Shanae, your numbers are not accurate because the county contributed $9 million around 2023. This program is one of the major causes of MTS and NCTD's extreme budget deficits. They don't want to admit it because 1, it's a socialist freebie for votes, and 2, because it makes it look like ridership on their dying systems is going up when it's actually been plummeting since 2010, when they stopped collecting fares, which led to criminals riding and creating a dangerous environment, as evidenced by the 2019 to 2022 crime data. YOP is a completely unaudited program, 4 years, and there's been no total spending amount tracked, no individual rider use data, including how many kids from Mexico are taking up our transit, no evidence that child participants keep using transit as adults, no profit losses or gains tracked, no parental consent for children are signed up, no child trafficking data or prevention programming, no safety, and no behavior expectations for children riding on our tax dollars. I've seen children trash trolleys, fight other children, harass paying adults, be exposed to violent and dangerous situations by adults. I've seen children vaping, playing loud, profane music, and having an open, disrespectful disposition to the concept of public transit. Example, 16-year-old Chico, who was killed by his fellow teenagers at the 32nd and Commercial Trolley Station. Zero security around as usual. What if the threat was a pedophile? What is the cost benefit of YOP? Because those goals from 2021 are outdated and irrelevant. How many millions have been diverted from other projects like Safety for the 67 or Safety for Transit? Why did staff play games about the funding source and pilot program status? Is it because this is a fake free ride so union-funded progressives can earn votes? Because only the paid activists speak in support of this program. Well, I actually have experience with it. You on this board don't, and it shows.
Next is Cesar Javier, followed by allegedly Audra. This is item 6.
Cesar and Purita, no longer categorized in the youthful stage in life. We simply understand this idea by saying that SANDAG is trying to look at sourcing, money, where to get from, and support pilot projects. Transportation, free ride for the youth. That's our dream. That includes perhaps seniors. We would like to consider elements of demography and geography. Could we not do some pilot projects on those victims the youth victims of the Tijuana air pollution. Sir Mario, Ma'am Chair, because that's something, a noble idea. Moral boosting. And these young people are the platform of our modern society. Never mind the seniors if that's the case. But we have to do something for the young ones who will carry the cross of survival of the region, demographically, geographically. I will ask the city of San Diego public officials, elected officials. This is a noble idea. And let's focus on those sick and dying youth. Ma'am Aguirre, you declared this when you took over District 1, hoping that we could resolve this issue soonest. That's the reason why we are here.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Next is allegedly Audra, followed by Gambler Online. This is item number 6, Youth Opportunity Program.
Imagine if children had to fight for funding in their own family and you were competing for it. Imagine the kind of Hunger Games that would be. It's, you guys might see the way things really are at that point. I don't understand what this is really about, this presentation. I mean, how many kids are you serving? You don't really want to tell us that, like how much per writer. It's like a bunch of, you know, nonsense when it's like, if this is really to provide something for the youth. I just find it sad because everybody likes to use children as a virtuous thing, all while they, you know, claim to protect them. But it's like, there's no safety measures to make sure children are safe riding public transit at all. I mean, even as an adult, you're not safe. So it's like, you know, the situations people put children in, and it's like, I mean, if this is just really about, you know, providing rides, and that's what we should be talking about. I mean, but you guys are like required to, you know, make a pilot program so they can get this funding, and then the funding is going to be taken, and how are we going to get it again? I mean, it's just a bunch of nonsense the way the government works, and it works great the way it is because, you know, the illusion goes on that you guys are doing something good, but it's like we have people like Paloma who, you know, want to hide information from children that is detrimental to children under the guise of protecting them. But it's like if people don't see the abuse that's going on, I mean, look at the Polensky Center. We have children that have been being abused for decades, and it's like that place is still open. And then there's children that continue to be abused in like juvenile detention, and it's like, you know, you can always use the child to say we want to hide that because it's detrimental to them. But it's like, if what's happening is detrimental, then people need to know that because they have this illusion that things are going well. And it's like, we need to be talking about that, you know, pedophilia does run rampant, and you guys are putting children in a dangerous place, especially when in schools they're learning about, you know, pronouns and sexual behaviors. It's just, it's really sad that children are used in such a nefarious way.
Next is Gambler, followed by Paul the Bold Online. This is item 6, Youth Opportunity Pass.
Hey, board of dickheads. Let me go ahead and remind you, the NGOs that you guys all signed up with, that you took their fraudulent ballots that got you elected, the ones that you go ahead and listen to them instead of the people. I mean, the people tell you what they want. You just flat out don't listen because you know that the people aren't electing you, right? You're fully aware of that. But here's the thing. It's going to be discovered, I'm hoping this year. As soon as they give me the answer saying no records exist, they have to create one. And at that point, they're going to go ahead and rediscover the fraud that we saw in 1982. I think you should all look that up because the new rules on our election allow this to happen without the assistance of people working at the registrar of voters. I know this, working there for 20 years. I know this because the county is trying to throw me in jail to keep my ass quiet. Because I call you guys dickheads, assholes, jerks, whatever the word that comes to my mind at that time. Why? Because you don't no longer listen to us. You no longer give a rat's ass what we have to say, and you do whatever the fuck you are told to do by the NGOs, the friggin' faggots that sit on the ground and blow each other up. You try to go ahead and encourage kids to do the same fucking thing. How fucking idiotic are you guys? Do you think this is going to this grift is going to continue going on forever? Do you think no one is going to ever catch on? Dude, we knew about it in 1982. It is happening today, and it will be discovered. Any of you guys taking kickbacks will be prosecuted for that as soon as we get through here.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Next, our last public comment is Paul DeBolt. This is item 6, Youth Opportunity Pass.
Paul Bold. Still a pilot program. After the 3 years it's been in operation, it needs to be permanent or not. And I suggest yes. It works. Let's transport lower income students to the school of their choice, not confine them to public schools with their limited educational opportunities. And I hear there may be too many disabled students coming for them to handle. This is how study gets ideas, inventions, artists, and non-traditional learning. Although I must remark these passes, the YOP program is for education, so better tracking is needed to support the expenditures and keep misbehavior down. Slide 8. When you say the YOP program, quote, relied on funding from federal congestion mitigation and air quality improvement, SMAC or CMAQ program, additional funding resources would be necessary to continue the YOP long-term, unquote. It was in the budget you just approved until 2029. This is what should be noted on the slide. Slide 10 says County of San Diego is still, quote, responding to public health and negative economic impacts of pandemic, unquote. Glad that SANDAG isn't the only one so far behind with all its outdated maps and time extensions and not representing the entire county as it should be. Slide 18, good recommendations.
Thank you. Your time has expired. That concludes our public comment on this item, Chair.
Thanks, Michael. We'll now go to member comments and questions. We'll start with Councilmember Fisher.
Thanks, Chair. I wasn't in attendance at the May 8th meeting, but I did have a chance to watch the meeting. A lot of concerns were brought up. I'm not sure if I found the answer in today's presentation, and that's okay. I think we've kind of outlined where the next steps lie in the future for any projects that kind of, are the pilot projects that get us to where we need to be. I noticed that in the presentation, Director Pickney-Forrest clearly states that this isn't an audit. And I know at the end of the May 8th meeting on this item, I think a colleague or two might kind of talked about having an audit or looking into internal controls. And I think the correct decision was to have it from internal controls. That being said, I noticed that Auditor Ruby's here and perhaps along with Director Forrest Pickney, could you explain kind of the difference between an audit and the internal controls? Obviously, internal controls is still fairly new to the agency. And I think that from my perspective as the chair of the audit committee, the terms aren't they're not really interchangeable, although they may seem to the boards. Perhaps just a brief explanation of kind of the difference would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure. So audits are, am I on? Okay. Audits are more formal, structured examinations. They are done under auditing standards. Based on the auditing standards, there are specific requirements in the report based on criteria, condition, cause and effect that lead to the recommendations. There's a requirement for sufficient and appropriate evidence, and there's requirements in regards to the level of supervision that is required for those particular reviews. Also, audits are typically retroactive, so they are looking at a specific period in time. And audits are there to provide assurance in regards to the decisions, the operations, the processes that are happening internally by management. An assessment, on the other hand, is more specific and targeted, and the assessment is on an ongoing basis. So it's what's happening in real time. The assessments are there to kind of give an overview of what's happening in real time so that there can be a discussion in regards to how to mitigate any particular internal control gaps that exist in that moment. So assessments are more informative, they are more management decision based, whereas an audit is more to provide assurance that what management is doing in regards to its operations is effective and working as intended.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So we'll move on to Mayor Ehlers.
Yeah, and thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. I too felt that some of the questions we asked weren't quite the subject of this response, but I think it was, and so I'll ask some clarifying questions. First of all, I appreciate the 4 recommendations for the changes. How will those internal control recommendations be implemented, and how will they be tracked?
Yes.
What program do they go into?
So right now, I am working on my internal controls risk assessment, and I am putting together my internal work plan for the areas of focus for fiscal year 27. One of those recommendations as it relates to the work that the board, the work that OGC is doing, that is already in progress, and that is being shepherded by the Office of General Counsel. The other recommendations as it relates to presenting communications to the board in a timely manner, that is probably a relatively easy fix. It's just a matter of what the preference would be. It could be something as simple as adding an inset to the agenda package that say these are the particular items of review, or these are the policies that will be reviewed during the discussion. So that one is a relatively easy fix. The other ones regarding the framework for determining whether a project or following a project from inception to completion, that is going to kind of be part of those items that I am looking at internally, because oddly enough, that recommendation does kind of track to some of the other recommendations that relate to the project management piece. So that tells me that there's some work that needs to be done there, not necessarily work in terms of there not being anything, but work in terms of making sure that all of the elements that we need for a project from start to finish are organized in a manner that's effective, and that they're not necessarily a checklist, but those items that I kind of listed from the comparison are explicitly available in the documentation that we have consistently across the board.
Okay, and I don't think I heard the tracking mechanism for these initiatives you're putting in place, and maybe a way to help this is internal controls reports internally to up through Mario, correct? Audit would be an external auditor, or in the case of the independent auditor, does not report through Mario. So isn't that one of the main fundamental differences?
However, there is, for a reporting mechanism for me, I report to the executive committee. So these items I could present to the executive committee as a part of my quarterly report on the status of the recommendations that these are somewhat related to.
Okay, then that's what I was looking for. That's a very succinct way to look at it. So I want to get back to just a little bit about my concerns previously were about the fact that this pilot program was getting put on, extended. And so it's really, I think the recommendations use the word program. And I think it's really, my concern was more the difference between a program and a pilot, and knowing when a pilot comes to an end. And one of the concerns, and it may have been Mayor Jones that brought it up, was, hey, well, when are we going to get the results? Because whenever I've run pilot programs in my company, we bring it to a conclusion, we get to the metrics, and we know what worked and what didn't work. This one seems to be the never-ending program, and has it in fact become a de facto program that's been implemented? And we don't want that. And I want internal controls that will prevent that in the future, because I believe pilots should be pilots, and programs should come through the front door and be approved and monitored. So ultimately, that I think that was what, and I don't know if Councilmember Fisher, if that's where you thought the mismatch was too. That I was just trying to get that out and make sure that we go down a path that will get us to clarity and not have pilots that get re-upped ad infinitum and become a de facto program. So
If I may briefly respond to that.
absolutely.
That is the purpose of the framework. I didn't kind of go through it in detail, but that framework is essentially identifying in the planning phases what is the purpose of the pilot, how long is the pilot intended for, what will be the funding sources for those pilots, what will happen if we choose to continue the pilot, if we choose to discontinue the pilot, and if we choose to hand this pilot over to another entity. So that process is designed to sort of catch those things on the front end, as well as bringing relevant information to the board in a timely manner that's very clear about what the content of the discussion is going to be for those relevant, for those related discussion points.
And to add, Mayor, something that came out, and we've discussed it like in 3 different items today, is the policy updates, right?
Yep.
So we have a policy that says, hey, a pilot should be 12 months here internally. And we had a funding source that it said your pilot can be 3 years and from the federal government. And if we go and look at the learning experience, I think we should be in the future, when Teddy brings in policy updates, we should be evaluating that policy of 12 months and probably thinking of 3 years to be able to implement that process that Shanae is mentioning of planning, implementing, evaluating, because in 12 months, you're not going to pull all that off, right?
Okay.
So you need that data to set baselines to compare.
Okay, very, very good. And I want to go on record that YLP is it's a very good program. This is not about the program. This is more about the governance of the organization. But I am looking forward to having the metrics that tell us what the costs were, what the ridership was, what the demographics were. So thank you.
I'm happy to tell you cost and ridership, since that's a question that's
please
come
go
up
ahead.
multiple times. Okay, so through March 2026, and that's the latest data that we have available, we've given almost 40 million cumulative youth boardings. And then you saw the cost in Shanae's presentation, but it's been roughly 21 million over the period of the pilot program. We've seen a big increase in youth boarding. So from 2019 to currently, across all of the different services, a 72% increase in youth ridership. And on some services, Coaster, for example, a 360% increase in youth ridership.
Okay, so now I look forward to this coming back to the executive committee, and let's take it from pilot to program and have the board then hear about it. So thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Aguirre.
Thank you. Great comments, Mayor. That was one of my questions, is how do we create and build in a more formal review? I think it's important that we quantify ridership, we quantify dollar amount, we formalize it, or we consider whether formalizing it or not into a formal program, because data is important. Anecdotal data is complementary to everything in life, but it's not what we should be basing our information on, because one perspective that's dystopian and negative could be easily countered with a positive one. I can tell you all the stories about what we see on everyday basis in Imperial Beach, with dozens, if not hundreds, of students coming out of Mar Vista High School every day, taking that free transit, going to work, going home because their parents may not be able to pick them up. So there's a lot of positivity anecdotally of what we've seen, but I think it's important to have hard data to make our decision. Now, I just also want to be on the record. It's no surprise to anybody. I'm very supportive of the Youth Opportunity Program, and I think that we should also analyze if this is something that we could consider expanding in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Edson.
Thank you. So to touch on Mario's point, and one I made previously, 1 year is not long enough to prove the worth of a pilot program, and we've seen that with YOP for sure. I personally support YOP like mad and have from, I advocated for it back years ago, many years ago, before I sat here for NCTD or on TC for NCTD. But I just wanted to say again that NCTD, the board of NCTD, overwhelmingly supports the YOP program. I mean, 100% supports the YOP program. And the staff of NCTD look forward to working with SANDAG to identify additional sources of funding for the future. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councilmember Chavez.
I just want to quickly mention how important it is that we continue with this program, and especially in Chula Vista when we have a university coming up. And I have a close relationship with Southwestern College, and you know, I have many students coming up to me and asking me, and the bus route, the 709, passes directly in front of the street where I live. So I get to see how important it is. Public transportation is just a vital piece to any formation. All our college students, all our students in general, and all our youth in general. I wish maybe in the near future we can think about holistic solutions, regional holistic solutions for everyone and anyone that can't afford public transportation. We're seeing our main arteries getting clogged up, at least again in the South Bay. I can pay reference to, and we need to think as a board how we can advertise better, a little bit better, to get more people riding on public transportation and being efficient. I can never thank you enough from that meeting that we had in Hamon, where you said, I was waiting in line and there was only 2 spaces for those buses, when we have buses in other cities that they don't even want them because it's just such a nuisance that no one's using them, those routes. So why don't we readdress them, and maybe what we're paying for that service that no one's using, we can readdress them and reallocate to people that really are, it's detrimental to their life. So I cannot be more in support, and moving forward, I would love to see more of this come forward.
Very good. All right. This was information only. We really appreciate the report and the answers to the questions that were asked. We'll now move on to SB 707 implementation. And our clerk, Michael, will be
712.
Oh, it's 7:10. Before we move on to the report, we need to extend the meeting because I think we'll go beyond the 12:30 end time. So may I have a motion to extend the meeting
by
to 1
Sanchez.
o'clock? And may I have a second? Second by Chavez. Please vote to extend the meeting. We'll say 1 o'clock, but hopefully it won't be that long. Oh, it's Jones. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. I knew it came over. Mesa's gone. Carl, oh, yes. Okay. You use Palomas, please. Thank you. Okay, that passes. We're good till 1. Let's not be here till 1. Okay, Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Board. I'm Michael Garcia. I'm your clerk. Today, I'm presenting SANDAG's implementation actions for Senate Bill 707, which imposes several new Brown Act requirements. SANDAG already meets many of the obligations, but one key item requires board approval, and that is a policy for how we respond to disruptions of telephone or internet service during public meetings. SB 707, it adds detailed procedures to what the technology disruption policy must have. If the public can't participate remotely, we must immediately notify all participants. We must recess the meeting and document our efforts to restore service. Other SB 707 requirements include standardizing remote participation practices, meaning if we offer two-way telephonic or audiovisual access, we should offer real-time public commenting and automated captioning. The bill also strengthens language access requirements. For SANDAG, Spanish qualifies as an applicable language under the Brown Act. So those agendas must be translated and posted within Brown Act deadlines. Additionally, interpretation support must also be made available. For SB 707, it also expands expectations for public outreach, requiring an electronic subscription system for agendas and proactive engagement with our community groups and our diverse media outlets. It also clarifies remote participation rules for board members by expanding what qualifies as a just cause. That includes caregiving or military obligations and allows accommodations for disabilities. SB 707, it adds new sections for committees and multi-jurisdictional agencies, offering more flexible teleconferencing options if authorized by the board. Most 707 requirements are already in place through SANDAG's existing policies and practices, including our public participation plan and current remote participation platform, which is Zoom. The missing piece, though, is a formal board-approved technology disruption policy, which is included as attachment 1. The proposed policy is taken directly from the Brown Act, and specific highlights include, as I mentioned, recessing the meeting for at least 1 hour or until services are restored, whichever is first. If a closed session item is on the agenda, it may be heard during that recess. To reconvene a meeting without teleconferencing, the board must adopt a finding that good faith efforts were made to restore access and that the public interest in continuing the meeting outweighs the public interest in remote public access. Finally, the meeting's minutes will include the time and nature of the disruption, the restoration efforts, and if applicable, the finding adopted by the board. So if approved today, this policy will be built into our standard meeting procedures and staff will continue ongoing compliance actions. So today, the board of directors is asked to approve the proposed policy regarding disruption of telephonic or internet service during public meetings to ensure compliance with Senate Bill 707. So this includes my report, and myself and councils plural are available to answer any questions you may have.
Very good. Thank you. Let's go to public comment first, and then we'll go to the board members. Francesca.
Thank you, Chair. We have 3 public commenters in the room and 2 online. We'll start with Truth and then Cesar Javier.
I think Michael's too close to the public. This is probably the only state mandate I somewhat like. It's only slightly flawed, which of course includes this unconstitutional lack of funding. However, I look forward to every jurisdiction having to join in on modern technology and increased accessibility, especially notorious Lemon Grove. And Jessica knows all about that. I offer to help any city test their system who would like me to. You can hear my voice over and over again if you prefer. Not really. Here are my expectations and demands for SANDAG's implementation of SB 707. No more doxing the last 3 to 4 digits of a private individual's phone numbers. Implement a sign-up system instead so that the clerk will have a name to call out to speak, thereby ending the illegal practice. For 2 meetings I participated in, the clerk once experimented with updating the system by no longer calling out a speaker's phone digits, but instead using the phrase call in user 1. For unknown reasons, they quickly abandoned this privacy-ensuring method. It was funny. I see no reason why something similar shouldn't be able to be introduced correctly. SANDAG is a billion-dollar agency, of course. A sign-up system will also create better meeting management, as the clerk and chair will know how many people signed up to speak, providing a meeting time estimate that Lisa's obviously in desperate need of. The county recently updated their sign-up system a few months ago, and it has improved greatly. And of course, Manny loves hearing me, with new additions such as adding a box to check if one is neutral, in favor, or opposed to an item when they sign up to speak, and adding a wait time estimate to the call line while in the comment queue when it works. They also show speakers in full screen when they're speaking. Why can't SANDAG meet with the county and figure out this basic stuff? SANDAG currently doesn't even provide clear remote access directions on its website. Even the directions on the agenda are not really clear. So it's easy. Just quit making excuses, follow the law, follow policies while you're there, show speakers, quit doxing speakers, and enter the modern age.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Cesar Javier, followed by allegedly Audra. Thank you. We'll go to allegedly Audra, followed by Paul the Bold online.
Man, talk about narcissistic abuse. And you guys all of a sudden care about the Brown Act, right? We got to follow the law. It's the law, but we're going to silence you in your free speech. We're also not going to notice meetings, stick our holes and feet into the ground and be like, screw you to the people. And you're lying on this document where you are saying that SANDAG provides a bulletin board near its digital signage where public provided agendas can be posted. That's total lie. You do not have a bulletin board. There isn't a place for people to post that. And so you are actually engaging in fraud right here. And it's like, I mean, I don't care if you're planning to get, I mean, you should have said, we're planning to provide. Don't say that you're providing that. That's a flat out lie. And you guys just got that digital signage because you wouldn't have been able to say that it's your agenda is posted right near the building. I mean, like you wouldn't have been able to write that a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, I'm full of shit when I bring it up. So it's just funny that you guys want to sit here and be like, we're trying to be in compliance, but you always try and pull wool over the people's eyes and act like you have been. But when it's flat out in your face, and you guys, and I guarantee you, you're not going to cure and correct those 3 meetings. And that is the sad thing. That's the first thing you should do. That is a very simple task. It is not a lot that I'm asking, but it's for you to be in compliance. And so you sit here and you act like you're going to do that. But you're going to prove to me that I have to go after since the beginning of the year, everything that you have done. And again, it's like, it doesn't have to be that way. But the way that you guys are so narcissistic and arrogant, I guarantee you we're going to be facing litigation, and that is absolute bullshit. Because that's costing the people money that we shouldn't have to spend on that. This is exactly why you can't be trusted. And everybody should read the Brown Act. It should be a requirement to read it, not just to be provided with it. And you should take a test.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Paul the Bold, followed by phone number ending 8813.
Hi, Paul Bold. So it sounds to me from the description like someone who doesn't like to hear the truth. Could simply take scissors or maybe an axe, cut at the communication wires, and the board could just meet in privacy or secrecy for an hour or longer. You guys ever hear of the Brown Act? Well, clearly you didn't read it very well, since section 54953.5, which you mentioned, has nothing to do with the video recordings. I mean, it has everything to do with video recordings, but not disruptions. You're probably referring to section 54954B. You don't seem to have read it too well either, but section B, 1A, I, 1B, clearly says, quote, the eligible legislative body shall not reconvene the open session of the meeting until at least 1 hour following disruption, or until telephonic or internet service is restored, whichever is earlier. So shutting down the meeting for at least 1 hour in all cases per your rules is not legal. You need to include this provision, not shut down the meeting arbitrarily for an hour. You may also want to notify people who have provided a phone number or internet address of when the meeting resumes. And I'll just...
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker has the phone number ending in 8813. You can go ahead.
Consuelo here. And it is appalling, astonishing to hear SANDAG and the clerk's office talk about public participation while refusing to address their own failures to protect the very people they're asking to participate. You encourage the public to come to these meetings, to speak, to engage, to trust the process. Yet, when your own negligence results in a speaker's personal phone number being exposed to the world, where's that urgency? Where's that accountability? Where's the freaking apology, honestly? Protecting the public's private information isn't a complicated task. It's one of your most basic responsibilities. Instead, months go by, concerns are raised, letters are sent, and still nothing. How can you ask people to participate when you can't even guarantee that they won't be at risk because of your own carelessness? Participation requires trust. Trust requires accountability. Accountability requires action, not silence. If this had happened to one of you, would it be ignored? Would it have been corrected, or would it have been corrected immediately? And you guys claim to have transparency. Well, whatever. Transparency. How about competence? Deserve a competent SANDAG, but that's not going to happen. And we deserve, and the public actually deserves to be protected when they are participating in these sound shows, quite frankly. So do your jobs, correct your mistakes, take responsibility. Again, the audacity. Nerve. And if somebody is on queue for an item, I mean, if the item's still going, you should honor the fact that they've just chimed in. So there's nobody chiming into these circus shows, honestly.
That concludes the public comments on this item.
Thanks, Francesca. Okay, we'll go to any member comments. I think all of our jurisdictions have had to do this, and we've done it already, so we're familiar with it. Mayor Sanchez?
Move approval.
Thank you. May I have a second? Second by Downey. Please use your devices to vote, and look what time it is. Howie? Didn't need the Howie? Please vote. You haven't voted. Yeah, thank you. Okay, that passes unanimously. All righty. So we made it under the wire here. First, before we leave, thank you very much, Michael. I really appreciate the report. I would like to thank Elite Security very much for all of their time and helpfulness in keeping the board and the public safe and secure. We appreciate it. Happy 4th to everybody, and we will adjourn this meeting until Friday, July 10th at 9 a.m. I know. You can stay, Mayor.